right now. Then we're going to move to introductions and welcoming remarks. I have a brief slide on participation guidelines that I would like to just walk everyone through. We'll have a staff presentation from city staff on the policy context. And then we'll do one as well from city staff on the development application process. And that'll sort of set the stage as to part of what we're discussing tonight. And then we'll go through an applicant presentation on the development proposal, and that will be done by me, so you'll hear more of me. Then we'll move to a moderated Q&A, and in that part, we will take questions from the attendees, and we'll do that in a curated manner. And then we'll do a wrap-up where we'll just discuss potential next steps. I have my contact information I can share for those that might want to follow up with me after, and we'll take it from there. Next slide, please. So, introductions and opening remarks. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate to have a great set of panelists and a very well-rounded group of folks here who can discuss this application with us tonight and contribute. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge Councillor Paul Sharman. Councillor Sharman, if you're willing to introduce yourself, if you have any opening remarks that you want to make at this time.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate this. Mike used to work for the city a bunch of years ago, so it's wonderful to have this opportunity to work with him. I just want to thank everybody to start off with for being here. We've got a good number of attendees. We're up to about 61 at the moment, which is great. So that's a good turnout. The reason I called this meeting was because we had some experience with an earlier application where we realized that in the context of a statutory public meeting, there are a lot of questions that were not being answered during that meeting that community members would like to have answers to. It would be interesting to know more about it. We found that when we had a meeting similar to this one, it was structured in the same way, similar people speaking, and we were able to I hope, answer some of the questions and concerns people had. Anyway, I have had a lot of questions and concerns raised by phone, by email, on social networking, and so it became really clear that we needed to hold this meeting and give everybody the opportunity to come along. So really grateful that you're here. We have with us the Mayor, Mary Ward. We have with us Councillor for Ward 4, Shona Stolte, and Ward 6, Angela Bentavenia. Myself and the Mayor will might jump in every now and again with comments. But I'm going to ask you, please ask questions, raise concerns so that you can get responses to them. It's really important. I neglected to say I'm delighted that Amy Collard, the Ward 5 school board trustee, was able to come because I know you have questions about a number of students who will be living in the development. And Frederick Thibault, who's the member of staff, who apparently is the guru of all data at the school board. Anyway, enough from me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Mike and everybody, and I'll pass you back the gravel. I think everyone knows I'm Ward 5 councillor. Okay.
Thanks very much, Councillor Sharma. I really appreciate that. You've hit a number on my list already for the introductions. Mayor Ward, I don't know if you wanted a moment to say anything. Please, now would be the floor is yours if you wish.
Certainly. Thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining this evening. We're here to get your feedback and answer your questions. So please do put up your hand or use the chat function somebody already has, which is terrific. I want to thank Councillor Sharman for holding this second meeting. We have a unique process here in the City of Burlington where we ask applicants to meet with the residents before they even submit an application. And that is unique, and that's so that we can hear from you, they can hear from you, and use your feedback to inform any future applications. So that meeting was held. This is a second meeting because many of you have asked for some additional opportunity to provide your feedback and to hear more about the project. So that's great. So that is one of the reasons we're here. Some of you will wonder what our meaning council's position on this application is we do not take a position until all of the review has been complete. That includes hearing from you here tonight. It includes hearing from our staff who will be reviewing all of the materials submitted, as well as hearing from the applicant. So there will be lots more opportunities for you to give your opinions about this. Give us your feedback, tell us how you would make it better or different. That's what we're here to do. So please take advantage of that and future opportunities as well. We're a ways off from any decision being made by council. And we would have to hear from staff on that with a recommendation first. So I know that is coming in terms of the development application process. You'll hear more about that. But just to be clear about council's role here this evening is really to hear from you so that our views can be informed by what you have to say to us tonight.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mayor Ward. That's fantastic. We already highlighted this, but I just want to be clear. Councillor Sharma was kind enough to get started on the introductions, but we do have also Ward Councillor Shauna Stolte attending as an observer. So thank you for attending, Councillor Stolte. And we also have Councillor Angela Medvania also attending as an observer. So thank you very much, Councillor Medvania, for attending. We are fortunate to have the folks from Halton District School Board with us. So we have the Ward 5 trustee, Amy Collard. Amy, I don't know if you have anything you want to say or just say hi or not at all. That's fine. I'm not sure what you prefer.
I'll just say hello and let the meeting progress so that we don't take up too much time on this part of it. But I am very glad to be here and happy to be invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The planner from the Hull District School Board is also here. Fred Tebow.
Yes, that was going to be next. So Mr. Tebow is here as well. And Fred, I don't know if you want to say hi as well or just know that you're here and that's sufficient.
Good evening, everyone. Looking forward to the meeting and happy to take any questions today.
Great, thanks very much. Great, so then we also have some city staff with us as well. We have a great collection of representatives from the city planning department. So we have with us Bryn Neely, who's the Executive Director of Community Planning, Regulation, and Mobility. Bryn, do you wish to say hi? Do you have a moment to say hi?
Certainly, I'm glad we're having this chance to continue to reach out to the community and have dialogue about development in the city. So thanks for this opportunity, Mike and Councillor.
Thank you very much, Bryn. We also have Allison Enns, who's the Manager of Policy and Community Planning. Allison, did you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Allison. We have Kyle Plass. He's the Coordinator of Development Review. Kyle, are you able to say hi?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Kyle Plass, Coordinator of Development Review with the city. Looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Fantastic. We also have Melissa Morgan, who's a planner with the Development Review section, and Melissa has carriage of the file. Melissa, did you want to say hi?
Good evening. And I'll be here for questions as well, and I'll be providing a brief presentation.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. We have Rosemary Fitzpatrick, who's Councillor Sharman's assistant and helping run this whole show. So Rosemary, you don't have to say hi unless you want to, but happy to have you here as well. Great. Then from the applicant team, we're able to provide most of our consultants, I think, will be of interest. So we do have some representatives from the developer here tonight. So first we have Sherry Armian. Mr. Meehan, if you wanted to say hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us.
So he is the CEO of LJM Developments. We also have Natalie Beach, Marketing Coordinator. Natalie, do you want to say hi, please?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here.
We do have Mr. LJ Meehan in attendance as well. He actually has another public meeting happening at the exact same time, so he's trying to attend 2 meetings at once. So he is monitoring this meeting, but isn't necessarily on camera right now. It will be available if there's any questions that might require him. I just want to acknowledge that he's here. We do have also from our transportation consultant, Paradigm Transportation Solutions, Mr. Scott Tadden. Scott, did you want to say hi?
Good evening, everyone.
We have from our civil engineering consultant, which is MTE Consultants Inc., we have George Bereni. George?
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone.
And we do have Matt. So we do have Matt from Adesso Designing, our landscape architect, Matt Madigan. Matt, did you want to say hi?
Hey, everyone. Sorry for joining a couple minutes late there.
Not a problem. I introduced myself, so I'm Mike Crow. I'm Associate Director and Practice Lead with IBI Group out of the Hamilton office. So I'm a planner. And with me as well from our office is Richie Hader. Richie is a planner with IBI. Richie, did you want to say hi?
Glad to be able to answer any questions.
Okay, so I think we've covered everybody. That's great. So hopefully you're clear on those names, and obviously we can help out if necessary. But we want to make sure there's enough people here that can answer some of the questions that we think might come up and have a great discussion. So thanks everybody for joining us so far. Next slide, please. So I put this together. Next slide, please. Just some participation guidelines, just to help structure the discussion. I want this to be not so rigid. I want it to be just that, a discussion. We're here obviously to have a good dialogue. We're going to present some material to you as the applicants. We're going to hear from city staff. I think all that will be very helpful to the attendees. And then obviously we want to hear from you and hear your questions, do the best that we can to answer them, and hear comments. So I want it to be a little free flowing. We're going to try and keep track, of course, of who's raising their hand and doing things. But we just have some things that I think are important just to keep in mind. So number one is this is obviously a Zoom meeting, and everyone here who is an attendee doesn't have the ability to participate through speaking unless they are elevated to a participant status. So to do that, you need to use the raise hand function. So if you're joining by your laptop or your computer or your phone and you're on the web app, the Zoom app, then you use the raise hand function, which hopefully you're familiar with. There's just a little icon at the bottom or top of your screen. You press that. When your hand is raised, we'll note that you wanted to ask a question or make a comment, and we'll keep a list of that. When that happens, you'll be elevated to participant status and you'll be given the ability to share your screen or share your video and speak. Okay. When speaking for the first time, I would appreciate it if you turned your video on. I mean, it's not mandatory, but it'd be great to see you and hear who's speaking and get your name as well, and also your mailing address. I think that just helps us know who's here and where people are coming from and get a flavor for who's attending. We like to keep it to a maximum of 2 questions or comments at a time. So I'm doing that in a way that we can kind of keep it going. There's a number of attendees here, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to get through a list if there's a number of people. So 2 questions or comments at a time, and I'd like to go through those in order and get through all the first-time speakers first. Once we've done that, then we'll go back and do any repeats. Prefer not to have any repeat questions, so we'll try to keep a track of that as well and not revisit the same old questions. So keep that in mind when you're listening to the conversation preceding you. If there's something you wanted to ask that's already been asked, then perhaps you want to go with something else or make another comment. Of course, there's going to be some issues or some questions that we just maybe don't have the answer for, or can't resolve tonight. Saying we'll be parking that. That's just an opportunity for us to consider it further, and that could apply to really anybody on this call. If we have the answer and we're good to go, we'll definitely share that. But if there's something that we either don't know or need more time for, we'll let you know and we'll work through that. Of course, there's likely going to be a range of opinions. It's possible there'll be different statements. It's something that you might not agree with. So just keep that in mind, that the point is to get those comments out and to hear those and to understand what the perspectives are. So let's respect the fact that everyone's going to be sharing their own opinions, and that goes for those answering questions, asking questions, or just making general comments. We will be taking notes. So I have Richie with me. She's going to take notes as best as we can. They're not going to be word for word. And then we will share those somehow. Right now, I don't think we know exactly where we're going to put them, but you'll have my contact information at the end of this meeting. The last slide will have my email address and phone number, so you can reach out to me, and we will have those provided to you. And we'll make sure everybody can get them somehow, some way in the coming days. And that just reminded me, I forgot to say something right off the top, which is that we are recording this meeting. I should have said that right away, so I apologize for that. So we'll have a copy of this meeting as well. Hopefully nobody has an issue with that at this point, but we do want to keep a record of it. It does obviously help revisit the issues and answer the questions and make sure we understand, we have notes taken properly and that type of thing. Okay, next slide, please. So now we'd like to move to the city staff presentation on the policy context. So for this point, I would turn over to Allison Enns, who will switch presentations. Thank you, IT. And Allison, I'll let you take it away whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Mike. And that's right. I'm going to do a very high level, very brief sort of setting the context at the 30,000 foot level, talking about planning policy and how it actually translates to the area you call home and we call the Uptown Urban Center. You're going to hear a little bit more from Melissa when she goes into her presentation about the planning hierarchy. I think all you need to know in the context of my part of the discussion is planning is led by legislation and high-level provincial plans and policies. Those provincial plans and policies get translated to the region and then to the local level where we build policies to help us fulfill our role in accommodating growth and how we guide change over the long term. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about our new official plan and touch very briefly on the region's official plan review work that's happening right now. Next slide, please. You may or may not know that the City of Burlington adopted a new official plan in 2018, and it was subsequently approved with modifications by the region in late 2020. That plan was based on research, discussions with the community, and a lot of study. And part of that study included a closer look at the Uptown Urban Center. And when I'm saying that, I am meaning generally the area that's centered around Upper Middle and Appleby Line. So while the new official plan is subject to appeal, it is really helpful just at this point to share a bit of the direction about how the city intends to accommodate growth and change. So this Schedule B, is the urban structure. It sets the big picture view for the city's urban area. It has distinct areas, and each area plays its own role. Some of the areas ensure long-term protection from change, while others support growth, intensification, and appropriate transition over time. Next slide, please. The new official plan also contains policies that protect our established neighborhood areas from significant change, from major change. And it does that by planning to accommodate significant population and employment in key areas. So those key areas are our downtown area, our uptown area, and really significantly our major transit station areas. And you may or may not have heard the exercise going on right now about planning those for the very long term, our major transit station areas, key areas where we've got transit, where we can build complete communities and build new homes and places to work. So as I mentioned, those are the areas that we have identified in the city's official plan as the primary growth areas. Those areas that are going to see the greatest degree of change over time. Next slide, please. You'll see planners love a schedule, and we do refer to these schedules a lot. This schedule really is intended to tie all the land use planning together with how we get around. And it really is a signal to the city to say, if we intend to grow and intensify in these areas, here are the commensurate investments, the things we have to do to make sure it's easier to get around and use different modes of transportation, like transit, like supplementing and improving our active transportation connections. And we have, alongside our official plan, of course, our integrated mobility plan, which is a key long-term planning document to make sure that we're making those great investments. Next slide, please. We'll just focus in on the Uptown Urban Center in the new official plan. So you'll see most, the dark, I won't go through the land use permissions and the designations, but you see it really is intersection focused at upper middle and Appleby Line. Each of those areas is guided by their own policy framework. And as you know, as residents of the area, there's a significant area of really stable residential that gets dealt with and protected through the policies of the area. Okay, next slide, please. Like I said, this will be just a speed tour, but I do want to spend just a moment talking about the region's official plan review. So the region, like I mentioned at the beginning, the province gives us the direction, tells us what we need to accommodate, and the region translates that into a growth management strategy, and that layers into the local approach. So before you see official plan, or regional official plan amendment 48, and this is just gives you a snapshot of the areas that, in the context of the region, the whole region of Halton, and this is a bit, this image is a bit cut off, but it gives you a sense of where big areas for change and growth are going to be and how we're going to connect them, similar to the official plan that we were just talking about. The regional official plan set a regional urban structure and identified these, what they call strategic growth areas. And they are really areas where we're going to accommodate population and employment growth, see more intensification, higher density, and mixed uses, all in a compact form so that it can work with transit. This is ROPA 48. This is approved by the minister. And you'll notice that the Uptown Urban Center has been identified as a primary regional node. I think, just slide, go to the next slide, which is my last slide. I just want to give it a little bit of contrast. ROPA 49 is currently in draft through the region's official plan review process. You can find out all about that on their web page. But one key change I just wanted to flag is that in the context of ROPA 49, the Uptown Urban Center, instead of being a primary regional node, is now a secondary regional node. But the basics, the most important part of it being identified as a regional node is it is still an area where it's integral to the region's urban structure, and we're going to see change and growth. And we're going to make sure that we're investing in transit in these areas. I think the important thing to know is that it's part of the regional urban structure, and the policies in the local official plan and the regional official plan will give council at the local level, council at the regional level, a blueprint for where do we need to make those investments to make sure that we can accommodate this growth, where do we need new parks, where do we need new facilities, and how do we support this in a way that makes it a great place to live. And I think that's my whirlwind tour, and I would recommend, if you're interested in any of this, contacting me or going straight to the region's official plan review webpage where you can find lots of information.
Okay, that was great, Allison. I think that's the perfect way to set the table for the discussion. So I appreciate all of those comments. And now we will turn it over to Melissa, who will do the application on the presentation on the development application process. So Melissa, when you're ready.
All right, thank you. And I believe that you have my slides as well. Perfect. All right. So good evening, everyone. As Mike mentioned, my name is Melissa Morgan, and I'm a development planner with the City of Burlington. I'm also the development planner that is working on the subject application before us tonight. So my role in tonight's meeting is to provide information about the planning process and a brief overview of the submitted applications. And development applications go through an extensive planning process. There are many opportunities for the public to participate before any decisions are made. And I would like to outline some of those for you this evening. So next slide, please. So first I'll start off by explaining some of the steps in the application process, which can be seen in this flow chart. The first step, the previous slide. Yeah. So the first step, as you can see at the top left, is the technical pre-consultation process. And this is where the proponents meet with city staff and external agencies in order to determine the required planning applications and which supporting documents would be required as part of a complete development application. So in this case, the technical pre-consultation took place on March 17th of 2021. A pre-application community meeting was held on June 17th, 2021, which was the first opportunity for the community to hear about the proposal. The applications were submitted by the proponent to the city on December 23rd, 2021, and that was followed by the public and technical circulations, which took place in January 2022. And a statutory public meeting took place on April 5th, 2022, and this is where staff or myself presented the application, the relevant policies, and the technical and community comments to council. At this meeting, council directed city staff to continue to process the applications, and that's the stage that we are at currently in the application process. So once the ongoing review of the applications concludes, there will be a second committee meeting, and that will be where planning staff will present a recommendation report to the committee to either approve, modify, or refuse the applications. The second committee meeting will be a public meeting, and the public will be able to delegate to committee and provide their input. The timing for the second committee meeting is not clear at this point and has not been scheduled. But residents within 120 meters of the development site will receive a notice, as well as anybody who has indicated that they would like to receive future notices for the applications. So following the recommendation meeting, at the recommendation meeting, the City Council will make a decision. And as I mentioned, delegations can occur at this meeting. Once the decision is made, it is subject to an appeal through the Ontario Land Tribunal, or the OLT, and that's an independent administrative tribunal which is responsible for hearing appeals on a variety of municipal matters. The public is also able to participate in this process should it occur. And again, should the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications be approved, they would be subject to further approvals. This would include site plan approval as well as building permits and any other relevant approvals beyond the planning process. So there is additional time from the time that a decision is made on the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications before the proposal is actually constructed. The next slide, please. So the city has created a web page for the development proposal, and this can be accessed at www.burlington.ca/1860 Appleby, and the URL is at the top of the slide here. The webpage is updated with new information as the development application moves forward through the process. So the webpage is a good resource for up-to-date information on the status of the application. And on the screen here at the top right, you can see the subscribe button. If you click on the subscribe button, you'll be able to receive an email whenever the web page is updated with new information. And so by subscribing to the web page, it would allow you to track the status of the application, give you the opportunity to review the technical reports and studies that were submitted, and provide you with notices of upcoming meetings, which I mentioned to you earlier. And the next slide, please. So just a little bit of information about the property. The lands are known as 1860 to 1900 Appleby Line, and they're surrounded by Ironstone Drive, a commercial plaza, and high-density residential uses to the north, which includes a 16-story mixed-use building connected to stacked townhouses on the northeast corner of Appleby Line and Ironstone Drive. The property is adjacent to Appleby Line, an 8-story mixed-use building, and low-density residential uses to the east, and commercial uses to the south, and there's a fire station directly to the west. The lands are currently occupied by 2 multi-unit retail commercial buildings with a height of 1 and 2 stories, and the existing uses consist of office, retail, and restaurant uses. And the subject proposal, as I'm sure Mike will go through in more detail, but it applies to the northern portion of the site. And the next slide, please. And again, I'll just very briefly go through this. I'm sure this will be covered in the future presentation, but the applicant is proposing a mixed-use development consisting of residential, retail, and office space within 3 towers, having heights of 18, 16, and 16 stories, and a total of 560 residential units. Retail and office space are also proposed in each building. And as I mentioned, the proposal applies to the northern portion of the subject lands. The northwestern corner of the lands is currently vacant, and that's the corner that's proposed to be developed first. So that would be phase 1 of the proposed development. Again, additional details I'm sure will be provided, but for now, we'll move on to the next slide, where I'll briefly, again, touch on the policy context. So all planning applications are reviewed against policies at the provincial, regional, and municipal levels, and all planning decisions must conform to the higher level or the higher tier planning documents. So starting at the provincial level, the Planning Act sets out the ground rules for land use planning in Ontario and describes how land uses may be controlled and who may control them. There are also a number of provincial planning policy documents which guide land use development in the province, including the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and other related provincial policy where it's applicable. At the regional level, Halton Region has an official plan which sets out a policy framework for land use and development for local municipalities within Halton Region. So this brings us to the municipal level, where the city's official plan describes the city's vision on how land uses or how land in Burlington should be used. Below the city's official plan is the City of Burlington zoning bylaw, which regulates specific land uses and development requirements. So the proposed development requires amendments to both the City of Burlington official plan and the City of Burlington zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So the City of Burlington official plan identifies the property as being located within the Uptown Mixed Use Center, as shown on Schedule B, Comprehensive Land Use Plan, Urban Planning Area of the official plan. The official plan seeks to establish the Uptown Mixed Use Center as a mixed-use community, which also provides a focal point for Northeast Burlington. Schedule F, Uptown Mixed Use Center Land Use Plan of the official plan, identifies the subject property as being designated Uptown Employment. Residential uses are not identified as permitted uses within this designation, and a maximum building height of 28 meters is permitted. So as I mentioned, an official plan amendment is being applied for, and that is one of the applications that is being reviewed at this time. The next slide, please. So the City of Burlington zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw 2020, zones the lands as Uptown Employment with a site-specific exception, or UE-496, as you can see on the map on the slide here. So this zone permits various retail, commercial, service commercial, community, office, hospitality, and recreational uses. So again, residential uses are not permitted in this zone, and a zoning bylaw amendment would be required in order to permit the proposed use. A site-specific policy or a site-specific zoning exception has also been requested in order to address deficiencies on the site, such as permitted uses and the request for increased height. And other requests that are included, other requests also include reduced amenity area, reduced parking, increased density, and other regulations that may be identified as part of a more detailed zoning review, which is currently being undertaken at this time. The zone that is proposed for the site is Uptown Commercial, and that would be UCR1 with a site-specific exception, as I mentioned. At this time, the proposal is conceptual and not all zoning details have been provided. So as I mentioned, as part of the review, a very detailed zoning review will take place, and a zoning bylaw amendment would be reviewed in that context. So the next slide, please. Sorry, I guess that is the last slide, but if you have any questions about the process or the submitted planning applications, you can direct the questions to the city. You can visit the city's website, www.burlington.ca/planning process for information on how we review development applications. And lastly, feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Melissa Morgan. My email is melissa.morgan@burlington.ca, and feel free to visit the city's webpage at www.burlington.ca/1860 Appleby. And that's everything for me. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. That's a terrific presentation. So we can skip this slide. And so now I'll go through some details on the development proposal, and I will provide some more information on what we've submitted. Before I do that, there's a couple of things I just want to revisit. When we first started the meeting, I didn't see anybody that had joined by a phone, but now I see that there's two people who joined by phone, which is great. That's fine. Obviously, you wouldn't be seeing the presentations. But for your information, if you do want to participate in the discussion, you can use your touchpad. So *9 will be the raise and unraise your hand function. I've never done this, so I haven't used it. I'm not speaking from experience, but that is the Zoom method. So if you're calling by phone, you can press *9 to raise and unraise your hand, and then it's *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Okay, so for those by phone, *9, raise and unraise your hand, *6, mute and unmute yourself. Okay. I see that there was a question in the chat also about the questions, the Q&A period, and I think I used the term curated. What we meant by that was just facilitated. Obviously, we'll be giving people access to the Q&A function, certainly limiting people to 2 questions and comments at a time, and then trying to avoid any repeat questions. So that's really what that meant. I also see right now that there's an attendee, Doug, with his hand raised. Now, Doug, I don't want to leave you hanging with your hand up in the air, but I was hoping to do the Q&A at the end, so I'm hoping you can wait till we get through this part. I would have you first in line. So number 1 for questions, if it's okay with you. I just want to get through this next piece so that, who knows, maybe your question will be answered, right? So with that said, let's move on. So I'll also do a bit of an overview of the site in the planning context, just to, because I like to do that. I think it's a good, reiterating kind of where we are. So next slide, please. Planners love schedules. Planners also love air photos. Can't help themselves, right? Air photos are fantastic. So just to reinforce the subject land. So here we are in the center of your screen. That light blue color, that's the subject lands. And here we're zoomed out a bit to see the neighborhood context, which has already been covered to some degree by others. Next slide, please. And here we are just zoomed in again, and we know this site well developed with the 2 plaza buildings and surface parking, the access to Ironstone, the access to Appleby Line, and a busy plaza that's used by many, and certainly offering a number of services and uses that I think a lot of the neighbors here would rely on or utilize. Next slide, please. I can't help myself either here. I love these 3D Google or 3D video images. I think they're fantastic. So we'll just spin around here. So here's the site in the middle of your screen. Just seeing it from this vantage point to the north, you can just see the base of the taller residential buildings on the other side of Appleby Line. And then on the left-hand side, kind of upper left-hand corner, you would see the commercial plaza there with the multi-story office building. So, and then the low-rise residential on the other side of Appleby. And next slide, please. So we'll just spin around here. We're looking to the east. Now we're seeing the other side of Appleby Line and the residential context there. And you can see the employment uses to the south. Next slide, please. Here we are looking now due south, and we see the employment areas, the light employment areas to the south. The city's fire station will be the upper right-hand corner. And just beside that, you can see the vacant part of the site where it was already identified that the phase 1 building is proposed to go. So it jumps out here on this view. Next slide, please. It's just the last viewpoint. So now we're looking from the east to the west, and you see the commercial retail plaza and multi-story building to the north. And just beyond that would be the hydro corridor and then, of course, Upper Mill Road. Next slide, please. So this is the existing OP context. This was covered already as well, but we just have the site identified here. So we know that right now with the currently in effect official plan, the designation is Uptown Employment, with one very small component, which is Uptown General Employment. Those are lands that were acquired later on. So they have technically two designations, but it's all one site. Next slide, please. This is what I refer to as the emerging policy context. This was covered by Allison. So the adopted city official plan, the new official plan, which has been appealed and is before the tribunal, did propose a change, and that change then would be Uptown Core and Uptown Corridor designation. So the Uptown Core is the dark orange color on the north half, and the Uptown Corridor is the medium orange on the south half. And so it is the Uptown Core that we've looked at, and our applications are trying to give form and function to that Uptown Core and make it a physical reality. Next slide, please. This is the existing zoning. So again, we have the UE Uptown Employment Zone that reflects and has to conform to the in effect plan, which is the employment designation. The 496 relates to previous planning approvals. So there was a temporary use bylaw granted a few years ago, and previous minor variances. Those established the mix of uses that exist on the site right now. So being employment lands, there was a restriction on the amount of service, commercial, and retail uses that could be permitted as a percentage of GFA, and previous approvals had granted greater than that. There was a condition that there would be some additional employment land development done at a later date. So nonetheless, really what you see there today is what the zoning permits, and really not much more, right? Next slide, please. So now I'll go through the details of the development proposal. If those of you that were on the call attended the I just lost my light. Attended the public meeting at council. A lot of this is going to be a repeat. I'm covering the same material. As we know from where we are in the planning process, we're still in the initial submission review period, so we haven't changed anything. There were comments that were received at that meeting. We definitely noted those, but we haven't done anything different yet. We were still waiting for all our technical comments, and of course, here we are again tonight with some additional discussion. So we're going to be presenting the same application. Next slide, please. So the key pieces I want to get across for everybody, if you haven't heard this before, so this is proposing a 3-phase development. So we have a 18-story tower being proposed as phase 1 on the northwest corner of the site. And then we have 2 16-story towers, phases 2 and 3, which would be sequentially phased in, moving to the east. They are mixed-use buildings in that they are residential in the tower component and retail or office at the base. Phase 1, the proposal is to build that without modification to either of the existing buildings. So there will be some site modifications and reorganization of the site, but those 2 existing buildings would not have to be modified in any way to accommodate phase 1. Phase 2 and 3 is a different story, and phases 2 and 3 would require a sequential demolition of the northerly building that exists right now. And if you look at it, if you went back to those air photos, it actually is in 2 pieces. So the one piece could be demolished and rebuilt, while the other piece stays, and then eventually that would be replaced as well. In all of those scenarios, the existing commercial building on the southern portion would remain. So when we're showing our concept plans, either phased or at full build out, you'll see that those buildings will remain, are proposed to remain with some surface parking. Next slide, please. Build out, we're proposing a total of 560 residential units. And this would be supported by about 1,500 square meters of retail space and about 1,800 square meters of office space. The office space is pretty much entirely in phase 1, and the retail space would be in phases 2 and 3. We're also showing what we are referring to as a POTS, which is a privately owned, publicly accessible public space. This is something that's fairly common in more dense urban areas. Exists in Toronto as an example, where it's technically private property, but through mechanisms such as easements and or legal agreements, it's publicly accessible. So it's maintained and facilitated by the property owner, but access is granted to the public. So it acts like a public square or an open space or something of that nature. So that's part of our proposal, and we'll show you that later. Next slide, please. For the each phase and the total build out, there was a purposeful intention to give some unit diversity. So it's a mix of studio up to two bedroom plus den. So you can see in this chart that if you go horizontally across the rows, that each phase would have a mix of those unit types, and then there'd be some different unit sizes within that, giving a total, and then that gives us a total unit count, and then within each phase, what we have at the end for the different the different dwelling typologies. So we definitely tried to mix it up and provide more than just one type of dwelling unit and size, and to hit a diversity of tenants. There are no 3 bedrooms here. That's something that was noted in the public meeting. So again, we haven't changed anything, but we received that comment as well. So something we'll look at. But for now, this is the proposal. Next slide, please. We're proposing a total of 3 vehicular access points. So there would be 2 connecting to Ironstone. There's one existing right now, which would remain. And then there'd be a new one, which is on the west side, closer to phase 1. And both of those ramps would lead to underground parking garages. So then accessing the site from Ironstone would give access to underground parking. The existing access to and from Appleby Line will remain, so that won't change. And then in totality, vehicle parking will be provided in 2 levels of underground parking, with also some component of surface parking spaces. And you'll see in our concept plan that we'll have to do that as well to obviously provide some surface parking for the commercial building that's to remain. Bike parking right now is proposed to be in the underground area. We'd have to address some at surface for short-term parking as well. That's something we'll work out, but obviously the intention is, and the requirement will be, to provide some quantum of bike parking as well. Next slide, please. So the parking totals, it becomes a bit complicated because of the phased approach and obviously trying to maintain that existing building. So this is something that we've taken a keen look at, but I think this would be something that probably we'll have to discuss further with staff and look at as we move through the review process. So we have a amount of parking that exists right now. We have an amount of parking that we provide to the phase 1, and then as we sequentially go through those phases, there'll be this transition of removing some surface parking, adding underground parking, and then again replacing some surface parking at the end. So the total result, really, if we just skip right to the build-out condition, would be about 858 total parking spaces. And if we have it laid out in a way that we think will work, it would give us about 86 surface parking spaces for that existing phase, which is the existing building. And then we would have 179 parking spaces for phase 1, which would be underground and surface, 300 parking spaces for phase 2, again, underground and surface, and 293 parking spaces for phase 3, underground and surface. So in the end, there'll be I would say a pretty substantial component of parking to the project, and it will be mostly underground parking, but there'll still be a quantum of surface parking to facilitate those at-grade uses. Next slide, please. So this I already touched on. I think I'm not sure I need to say much more. I'm kind of repeating myself here, but just to revisit the point that we've got this POPs in the middle of the site, and we've used that as a key organizing principle in our design. It's a structural element in our design, and we think the idea works on this site. But then, in terms of how it organizes the site, it gives us that separation between the new proposal and the existing buildings to remain, and then it provides that at-grade amenity space, which can be used by all, of course. And we'll also then give some connections out to Ironstone and to Appleby Line. So to facilitate some of that pedestrian movement and still get those connections to the existing buildings that's going to remain, and some of the uses, and allow tenants and visitors and commercial users to move around the site. And it provides just another avenue for walkability. Next slide, please. So now we'll start to see all this, and I don't want to spend too much more time on these graphics because I think probably people want to get to the Q&A. We're already at almost 8 o'clock. So this is our landscape site plan, just to show graphically in a conceptual manner how the certain elements will come together. So the beige color is more or less the building footprints, right? So pretty close to that. The gray areas would be the walkways or hardscape, and then the green will be landscaping. And again, you can see right down the middle in the east-west orientation, this pops green spine that we proposed. Next slide, please. Here's the model views. So the key piece for this, for us anyways, is to show how we can fit these buildings on the site in a way that is well separated. So the tower form that we're proposing, they're all spaced adequately from each other, so they're not, too close or piled in on top of each other. And then we've gone with a form that shows a podium structure or a terracing or a combination thereof at grade. And so what that does is allow us to step some of the towers back from adjacent streets to some degree at least, and provide that structuring element for the frontages so that they will frame the streets in a low-rise built form and provide that direct street front access. And so then if you look at Ironstone, there's almost a straight linear line there building out the site and providing that frontage, and then we can continue that down Appleby Line around the corner and kind of hit the corner condition as well. Next slide, please. So just more of the same. This is just the Ironstone view, just to highlight, and you can see how we think that these buildings will fit with the context. And you really, on the left-hand side, you'll start to see just the edge of the taller residential building, the Ironstone building, where it would be a counterpoint to what we propose at the corner as well. Next slide, please. Another view, just showing that internal viewpoint. Next slide, please. This is a street view, so we don't have full architecture for all of our buildings. The phase one we do just to make it more tangible, because that's the immediate focus. But in terms of the form and the relationships, this drawing would show how that would come together. So if you were standing at pretty close to the corner of Appleby Line and Upper Middle Road, and you were looking to the south, southwest, this is what you would see. Obviously, the buildings wouldn't be see-through, but just to give you the idea of the height and the massing and how the impression of that would look from that angle. Next slide, please. And then this would be from Ironstone. So if you were really just on the north side of Ironstone, maybe a few 50 meters or so west of the site, and you're looking back to the east, this would be the view that you would get from roughly that location. Next slide, please. So the phase one building, this is just the black and white elevation, conceptual elevation. Obviously, it's hard to read on the screen, but just wanted to show that it does have that podium and tower structure, right? So it's a fairly slender tower in the north-south direction. Okay, and so the idea is to just pull that back and provide some terraces and separations at grade. The height is about 58.9 meters, so let's say 59 meters. That's the proposed height right now in the 18 stories. And so this illustration will show you what that would look like from the straight elevation standpoint. Next slide, please. So this is the phase one, very conceptual site plan. We talked about how we could fit the phase one building and underground parking and some of the components in without disrupting the existing building. So this is really just intended to show that. The parking area would be mostly unmodified. There would be some rework done, and some access areas would have to be maintained, but we can carve out an area to allow the phase one to be implemented without really disrupting the site as it stands today. Next slide, please. This just shows one last time how we see it coming out as in terms of a phase build out. So we start from the west side of the site in the phase one, move to phase two and phase three, and each time we do that, we're working through the site and doing the modifications necessary to implement that and get to that final build out condition which we propose. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to get to the questions and answers period. And So I just want to be clear on that this is a full questions and answers. There's no, we're not, when I say curated, we're not regulating necessarily the content of your questions. Just want to make sure that we're monitoring the raised hand status and giving people a chance to speak and going through in that order I mentioned, where we'll try to go through for first-time speakers first and then get to repeat speakers. So I see some hands popping up right now. We're going to do our best to do this in a particular order, and I would say that if by chance we missed you in the order you think you should have gone in, just try not to get frustrated with us. I'm taking notes as we go through, and Richie's helping me out as well, and we will go through and get everybody their chance to speak. So I did say, unless we need to hear from anybody else, I did say that Doug was first up, and he's had his hand raised, so if we would let Doug come in with the first question or comment.
Hello.
Hello, Doug.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay. My apologies. This is the first time I've tried this process, so please bear with me. I have a couple of questions. I'm wondering where are the public comments addressed that came about as a result of the previous meetings, and has there been feedback from the people who provided those comments and questions as to whether they accept the responses or are still feel that they haven't been properly addressed?
Okay, so thank you for those questions. I think I can field that and welcome anybody else who wants to jump in. So Mayor Board actually highlighted earlier in the presentation that we did hold a pre-application neighborhood meeting, which was not attended by anybody. So we didn't have any questions or comments from that meeting to respond to. We did just have a statutory public meeting back in April where we presented the same development proposal. And I tried to highlight this earlier as well, where we're fairly soon after that meeting, and we've haven't done anything with those comments yet because we're still in the technical review phase, and of course we're having this other discussion here as well. So we heard those comments at the public meeting, we've taken note of those, but we haven't provided any responses or resubmissions or made any modifications yet because we're still in that process where we need to collect everything.
Okay, supplementary question, I guess, is the appropriate comment. So when will these comments be addressed, and when will the responses be provided to the people who made those comments?
Okay, thank you for that question. And for this one, I'll start off, and then maybe I will let Melissa, if she's willing to also answer. So I think those are two probably components of comments you might be referring to or speaking to. Any comments that are written are submitted in writing. So those would normally go directly to city staff through the application process portal. So if you were submitting them formally on the record that way or through committee or council as a written comment, then they're part of the record, and typically staff will respond to those questions in some fashion in their report. So if the recommendation report goes forward, whatever that recommendation is, it would include some type of component of at least addressing the comments in a fashion that puts them, aggregates them together into commonalities so they can be addressed in sort of by themes or in some type of matrix. And then the comments themselves will be included as part of the public record that would be provided to council. Anything that's sent to us in writing, we would keep track of. We typically would forward that to staff at some point as part of our resubmission process, or we would assume that it's something that we would roll into all of our technical comments and deal with in totality in terms of a range of issues as well. So, Melissa, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, or if you want to correct me on there, but I think that's what I interpreted from the question anyway.
Sure. Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, the comments that have been received up to this point will be included in the upcoming recommendation report. In addition to that, we will include, usually, as Mike had mentioned, a matrix that does categorize the themes of the comments and whether and if so, how they've been addressed. I'm still receiving comments or open to receiving comments at this time. So just to kind of reiterate to everybody, feel free to keep sending in your comments. You can continue to throughout the process until a recommendation is prepared. So that's, yeah, I think that's everything that I have to add there.
Okay, that's great. So, Doug, I think that's technically your 2 questions or comments now. So we'll move on to somebody else. But if you want to speak again, you can raise your hand again. So next I have on my list, it's just E. E, if you want to still ask a question or make a comment, then you can please move E to the participant status.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hey, I have 2 questions for you. One is the existing infrastructure that is running on Appleby designed to handle the 3 proposed buildings? 2, do you have developed a stormwater management strategy? And 3, is Appleby designed to handle the additional traffic flow?
Okay, thank you for the questions. I guess I'm already deviating from my rules where I said I would like to hear full names and mailing address. So I should have probably got that from you as well, because it would be nice to know your name. Can you provide that for us just before we answer the question?
Sure, it's Tom McDermott. I live in the Orchard.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, so for this question, I think the first 2 questions, which really deal with the infrastructure and servicing capacity, George, I'd like to call on you if you could just pop on and provide an overview of the work you've done to this date and the assessment of the phase 1 of the build-out conditions.
Sure, thanks, Mike. So with respect to infrastructure, municipal infrastructure, I'll break it into 3 sections: water, sanitary, and stormwater. So with respect to water servicing, the site is currently serviced from Ironstone, and under the phase 1 build and also under the ultimate build, the water service would continue from Ironstone. There's no issue there with capacity. With respect to sanitary, there's also a sanitary service from Ironstone for the existing site. And under the phase 1 build and under the ultimate build, the sanitary would also continue from Ironstone. There is capacity in the existing sewer to accept, based on our analysis, most of the drainage, most of the sanitary drainage from the phase 1 build. However, under the ultimate build, there would need to be an upgrade to the sanitary sewer downstream of the site on Ironstone. So we're still waiting for some technical feedback on that, as far as what the extent would be. With respect to stormwater, the site currently drains in, I would describe it as a southwesterly direction. So in the very southwest corner of the property, there's a storm outlet for the site. That storm outlet drains into an easement, which eventually connects into a creek. So we would propose to maintain that storm outlet for the site under the ultimate build. So that's sort of a high level summary of all three municipal services.
Thanks, George. And I guess that would cover the question on stormwater strategy as well. I think if that's sufficient, that would be the same approach. Okay, for the third part of the question, you were asking about the capacity of Appleby Line. So Scott Catton from Paradigm, if you're available, I'd like to call on you to answer that question, please.
Sure. So as part of the application, a transportation impact study was completed that assesses the intersection capacity of the adjacent road network. And in our study, we assessed 3 intersections along Appleby Line from Upper Middle down to Corporate. So it's Upper Middle, Ironstone, and Corporate Drive. And through that exercise, we've identified some capacity issues that are occurring today and are forecast to occur with or without this development. And also through this study, in consultation with the Halton region has identified that a third lane is possible or is under consideration for Appleby Line. That third lane in both directions is identified in their transportation master plan as being a high occupancy vehicle lane or a bus lane. And there will be capacity issues. There are capacity issues at these intersections where 2 major arterial roadways intersect. That's sort of life in the city when you come up to an intersection. And of course, we are still waiting technical feedback from both the Halton Region Transportation Planning staff and City of Burlington Transportation Planning staff.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Scott. So I think we'll consider those questions answered for the moment, and we'll move on from those. I'm keeping a list here in my notebook. So up next, we have Mike Salisbury. If we can elevate Mike to participant status and allow him to speak.
There we go. Thanks, Mike. Given global warming and the startling consequences that climate change entails, many organizations and municipalities are committing to net zero carbon emissions from projects. As Burlington is a progressive city with an eye to the future, what are the city and developers doing to offset the massive carbon footprint from not only the demolition of existing structures, but also the construction of the new buildings and also the resulting increased traffic on Appleby Line? I do have a follow-up question after. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, that's a great question. For our part, I guess at this point, I have, there's a couple of things that we're looking at as part of our proposal. We haven't done a greenhouse gas emissions offset study or anything like that. Obviously, a key piece of what we're proposing is intensifying this node at a key growth component of both the city and the region's urban structure. And you mentioned the massive amounts of traffic, but certainly there's a component of this site that's going to tie into the long-term transit and transportation vision for both the city and the region. And we feel like we're supporting that with this application. So if you step back and look at the high-level view that Allison provided, then really what we're trying to do is give form to that long-term vision of intensifying a key area that really I think is an underutilized site at the moment right now. Try to facilitate and build into that transportation strategy. We would hope that would long-term facilitate less automobile use. I mean, that's been the goal planning for decades now, and we're still trying to get there. But applications like this, in my view, help it, not hurt it. And go from there. I would say we don't have any lead specification components of our buildings or any other type of rating standards. I think it's a pretty standard building at the moment right now. I couldn't highlight anything significant in terms of a sort of a green strategy other than just really the intensification component. For phase 1, at least we can say we're not demolishing any buildings. So, for that component, at least we can say we're fitting in with the site as it is right now. And I think that's it. I guess other things we could highlight really would be the condo bike parking and the pod space, which we're trying to facilitate a sort of an urban form that allows the pedestrian connections and bicycle use, and that we have to feed into a wider network of a wider system, right, which have to be provided by others. So that's it. I don't know if the city really would want to speak to this right now at this point. Anybody from staff, I think it's really probably mostly for us to answer, but I don't know if anybody from the planning staff wanted to provide an answer as well or take a moment for that.
Again, I'll just note that the application is under review, and to add to what you said before, we also do circulate to the Sustainable Design Committee. They do review and provide comments. The city has a sustainable development checklist as well, which we do use to evaluate the application. So at this time, as I mentioned, it's still under review, but that will be addressed as part of the report as well.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. So then, Mike, follow-up question then, or second question?
Yeah. I just have a question with the city councilors' involvement with the application. City councilors that receive political donations from developers and their arm's length entities clearly have a conflict of interest. Are these councilors recusing themselves from the application process? If not, how does the city address this, as it is a form of quid pro quo corruption?
I'm not sure. Yeah. Do we want to? Okay. I see both Councillor Sharman and Mayor Ward with their hands raised. So perhaps I could start with Councillor Sharman, if that's okay, and give him a chance to respond.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Every donation or contribution by the citizen of the city has to comply with Ontario law, and it is only money received from individuals. It doesn't discriminate between people, and all contributions are legal. So I appreciate you have some opinions on there, but those are inconsistent with the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharman, and Mayor Ward, then, if you would like to answer as well.
Thanks. I would certainly endorse what Councillor Sharman has just said. I personally do not take applications from people who are individuals who are connected with the development industry. So that if I approve, vote in favor of an application, people are clear as to why I voted in favor, and if I vote against, people are just as equally clear. But it is not a conflict of interest in the way that you mean it. People can accept donations from individuals if they choose to on their campaigns. I don't for that reason. However, anyone who feels, any member of the public who feels that a member of council has violated our ethical obligations, including conflict of interest, there is a formal, free process to file a complaint. And that will be investigated by someone independent of council, independent of city staff. We just went through a similar process, so we're all very familiar with it right now. And then council gets a report assessing whether in fact we have violated conflict of interest. It is very serious. I can tell you council members take their conflict of interest obligations extraordinarily seriously, and you can lose your seat because of it. So we endeavor, and I know many councillors have double checked with our integrity commissioner to make sure that on any vote that we have any question mark or whiff of a question mark, we can get a ruling in advance and recuse ourselves as needed. So I would just offer that out to the public, that accountability exists. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ward. So we'll consider those questions answered as well. That's fantastic. So we'll move on from Mike. Next on my list, I had Andrew Hall. So Andrew, if you can be elevated to participant, please, and give me a chance to speak.
Hey guys, thank you. This is great. I have to say this is the type of meeting I think the majority of the people I've spoken to expected from day one. The last hearing, I think, was shocking for me because it exposed really how much is going on in our city and how serious a lot of these decisions are. And I think, regardless of what the law prescribes, there needs to be some time spent and energy put towards improving communication. And I imagine this is consensus across the board, but I think at this point, when you have the changes that have been made in the past 24, 30 months to our official plan, and the magnitude that they have on potentially 15,000 households directly, this is not a joke. This is big stuff, and I think we all need to be engaged. The city, published a report in April specifying that this was an integral part of what it was going to be doing going forward. And I think at a certain point that didn't happen. So I hope that we can do this going forward, or at least try better. I've got two pretty heavy questions, so I'm hoping I can get them both through. One of them is, I noticed in April 2018, Schedule E, the land use for Uptown, specified that effectively phase 2 and 3 of this current proposal would be zoned Uptown Core. The only change to that diagram or illustration between that time and November of 2020 was adding phase 1. So I'm curious to know what deliberations took place for that to be the only change. Were we, effectively making changes in lieu of a delegation sent to the city previously in response to the new official plan, or were we trying to make it fit? Like, I'm just curious to know how we got to that change.
Okay, thank you for the comment and the question. I can definitely provide some context to that question and answer it. I have been involved in the site since before that time. I would say partly was in response to submissions that we made through the official plan process on behalf of the property owner. So we've been retained for quite some time, and there was an intent to look at intensifying this site. I mean, it really kind of keyed off of the vision that already existed for Uptown anyways, and we thought the site was underutilized, and we made a number of planning submissions and spoke at committee and council meetings to make the planning rationale for that a good planning case that should be done. So I think those were received by staff and council and considered. You mentioned also, I don't want to get too carried away here, but you talked about the process and engagement. I can recall during that time where effectively I felt like council and staff were almost begging for participation, right? There was a lot of times where things were set up and, people just don't always have, the turnout isn't always great. So I know that there were lots of efforts made for that. In terms of how we got to the final decision, really we made a number of submissions. There was a motion by a councillor who's no longer a councillor, and that was the final decision put into the adopted plan. So, and that's how we got there, and that was forwarded to the region for approval from there and obviously maintained. So.
Okay, Mike, I think the prescription, to my understanding, I feel like I've been sucking on a fire hose the past month learning. The prescription, to my understanding, is one advertisement in the local newspaper and a notification to 120 meters. In this case, 60 to 70 meters is Appleby Line. The majority of the directions is industrial and commercial. So it's arguably insufficient when it's affecting 10,000 households. There needs to be a letter going out to more people. It's arguable. It's arguable. I think at a certain point, the city needs to be doing more than the minimum, I think, right? Because my understanding is Paul had to react. And I don't know where Sean and Angelo sit here, but Paul did the right thing and wrote a letter and sent a notice out to his entire ward, which I think, given again the size and the magnitude of these changes, that should have been done from day one. Enough of that. I think this is kind of a broad comment and question, but I think, the changes to the official plan as I understand them, my limited understanding, I'm not an expert, sees unbelievable potential development. Like potentially dozens of towers. Nothing in this area, anything zoned uptown core is safe. It's not immune. And I think, we came across a report from the same developer in, I think, November of 2017, that had one of their visions for this property that included 5 buildings. There was a 5-phase development plan. All the buildings were bigger than they are on the radar now. And that's cool. Like, I want to make it clear that I'm not against development. I if anything, I'm excited about it. I just think when we're, force feeding from constituent perspective, we're force feeding all this change. It needs to be done well. Like, it just feels like it's being rushed. So I guess my question is, like, at what point do we have a qualifier of some kind? At what point do we appease these growth thresholds? Like, at what point have we grown enough? Is that even possible? Because the official plan, the new one right now, leaves maximum floor area ratio, for example, open-ended. But it doesn't need to be changed in the city plan, the official plan. So I'm just curious at what point does the city as a collective or the region or the province say, you know what, Uptown is done. We're done growing. Like, we've built enough towers, we've got enough people living here. Because as of right now, we don't have enough infrastructure. It's a parking lot during rush hour. We don't have the ability to expand roads right now. Like, you can't, unless you start infringing and exacerbating pedestrian safetiness and friendliness, we're gonna have all kinds of issues. So I'm just wondering, at what point is enough?
Okay.
Can we make it slower roll and do it properly?
I think I appreciate the comments. It's great. I don't want to cut you off. I think we got your question, which is, at what point do we say we're done with growth in this location? I think is that your question? That's really what you're asking?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're right now set up for literally disgusting growth.
We heard, I think your points there have been made. Okay, so I mean that is a heavy question to answer. I really don't know that any of us could really say that. I mean, the planning that's been done so far has been about accommodating growth that's been forecast. There was the discussion earlier about taking the forecast from the province, right? So the way planning in Ontario was done these days, like, especially for these urban areas, the forecasts of growth are really everything. And municipalities don't really have a say in that. That's done by the province, right? They provide that. They do that technical paper. They do consultation on that. They will ask for feedback, but then once they adopt that into the growth plan, then those have to be utilized. You cannot not ignore those forecasts. They have to be accommodated. It's up to the regions and the cities then to take those numbers and make sense of that. In addition to all the other policies, which provide the structuring framework about where that should go and the local context, right? So, I mean, as you probably know, in this part of the world, it's one of the fastest growing regions in the world that has been for a long time. I've lived here almost my entire life, and I've seen it. It's always been a growing region, and I just don't see that is a stop-go scenario overall anytime soon. So whenever this area would reach capacity, I don't think any of us could say at this moment. I'm not trying to be evasive. I would open it up to staff or council if they want to comment on that as well. But I think that's a question that we just really can't answer with a definitive time or number at this point.
Mike, if it's okay, I might jump in from the policy perspective.
Please do. Yeah.
I mentioned a bit, Andrew, at the beginning about the region's process. How do we accommodate all this growth that's coming to us? How do we plan for it? And I think one thing I didn't mention in my earlier discussion was we brought comments on Robo 49. So I quickly showed you, okay, so Uptown will be a secondary regional node. And one of the things we said to council, and I should have said it, I should have highlighted it, is staff through the new OP looked at Uptown. Uptown, the secondary plan was built in the 1990s. So the changes in the new official plan really were about, okay, there is potential here. Not a lot has happened so far. There is an opportunity to adjust. But I think the other opportunity is to say, once ROPA 49 is through, we need to go back in, look at it again, understand what the regional node designation means to us. Do we need to do some more fine-grained planning? How do we, and I mentioned it before, how do we get parks? You mentioned it before. How do we get the infrastructure in place? So I think it's something that is not lost on us, but I think that we have the tools in our toolkit to do the incremental and the big picture at the same time. So I hope that's helpful.
That's great, Allison. I really appreciate that. So, Andrew, I think we can consider your questions answered and your comments received. So, unless there's any other speakers on that topic, I would move on to the next question. I did have Edmund Lee. I guess he's dropped off. So then it would be just Mike. Mike
Crow, the mayor would like to speak, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Thank you very much. Mayor Ward.
Thanks. I just wanted to add to the question of communications. So I know Councillor Sharman and all of the ward councillors have monthly newsletters, and they do announce all public meetings, development applications, links. So I would encourage everyone who is listening to sign up for that. That's an over and above way. I have a newsletter as well that covers citywide, but every single one, we put notices of development applications. So we follow it all through the process. It's right from community meeting prior to application when it comes to a committee and council meeting, how you can come and delegate. So certainly we'll be following this as well. So that is an over and above what the city does. The city does the what they are required to do legally, and also does the web page. So as you heard earlier, and if any folks have joined since the earlier presentation, since you can see all of the applications in your ward. You can subscribe to those. You can get an alert every time there's a change. So we are doing our best at the city to collectively go well above what the minimum legal requirements are. But if you have suggestions for additional ways we can get the word out, I also want to say a huge thank you to the residents group. Milk Crop Against Development, because they are awesome at spreading the word to their networks as well. And I know probably some of you saw it through that voice. So we work with the community and depend on the community to talk to each other, talk to us, use the tools that we have. And if you have suggestions, we're all ears. But you found out about it. That's great. We're still in the process, and there's over 100 of you here. So something's working well. But we're always open for suggestions of how we can do better.
Can I add to that, please?
Well, actually, I try to be respectful, but Councillor Sharman has his hand up, and you have already had your chance to speak. So I think I would like to just.
It's important, Mike. I don't want to be pushed aside here.
No, you're not being pushed aside.
All the councillors did not talk about that hearing on April 5th. A, and B, the primary reason all of these people are on this call right now is because of residents. So I don't think this is acceptable. We need to have a better way to communicate with people. Relying on the newspaper, relying on a notice to 120 meters is insufficient. Insufficient.
All right, let me jump in there then, because
I'll mute myself, guys. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Andrew, thank you. And as a result of the conversations we've been having, for 10 years, 12 years, Marion and I have been dealing with this 120 meters, and it's never been a happy journey. And people have always felt they have not been given sufficient notice. The critical thing is we've also evolved through social networking. And for this meeting in particular, I did mail to all of Orchard and all of Sheldon Creek with a flyer. And I agree with you that we can do better. But when it comes to these statutory public meetings, legal meetings, this is not about a council, council making up his mind to do something different. We actually need to change the city system. So the last meeting we had with the communications people, I asked them about how they might deal with that. So the point has been made. This is not about me changing my ways. It's about the city changing its ways. And we've asked for that to happen, and we're expecting to get some feedback on it. So point made, point received, and talked about, and we're dealing with it.
Great. Thanks, Councilor Sherman. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much. Andrew, you can always come back for more comments and questions, right? You mentioned that. Okay, so next on my list would be, we're back to Mike. If Mike could be given status to speak.
Mike, please unmute.
Okay, there I am. First, Burlington was a desirable, quaint little place that ended up, it was set aside from Mississauga and Hamilton and stuff, and basically in one fell swoop that it seems like we're going to lose all that. With this development in particular, that it was zoned as a retail commercial one-story, and now it's a 16 to 18 up to 28 story. So it had to go through a bunch of iterations before it got rezoned to this point. I think it's gone through 4 or 5 name changes, and with each name change comes another story. On top of that, it's not flat out rezoning that we've been notified about or not notified about. It's a variance or it's an amendment. That we've seen how these things end up working. That you say one thing on paper and then it gets turned around and not really met. So that includes like reduced amenities, reduced parking. Those things that are put on paper usually come to fruition before that the building's done. So in regards to this 120 meter notice, especially with this site, like who did you notify? An empty parking lot and the senior's home? Because that really doesn't extend too far. I lived less than a minute from there and I never got any notice. I came upon this and later in the development. So it wasn't promoted, and I don't think half the residents in the area even know that this is happening. So this is just with the one site. The other part of that is that there's another site just on the other corner. So in a 0.5 square kilometer radius that you want to put 2,000 people, 2,500 people, and then reduce the amenities and parking. And on top of that, the infrastructure is not there. You're building and then trying to make your case to say that we need to upgrade the infrastructure. Well, that you forgot about the residents that are already there. And not only do I feel I'm not represented, I feel betrayed. Our current councilor's been in our neighborhood. Do you honestly think that what this particular area needs is 5 towers? So on top of that one, how did we go from 1-story retail commercial to 4 name changes to allow 16, 18 stories without public input? Calling it a variance or an amendment is not the same as a rezoning. So that would be my first question.
Okay, maybe we could tackle that first because you gave us a lot there to consider, and it's great. But I see Councilor Sherman with his hand up, so maybe that's your first question. Let's try to answer that, Councilor Sherman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, Mike. You made some important points. The first one is that you said we have approved 16 stories And the critical thing to know is that the application for 1860s to 1900 is not approved. It is going through a review process by staff, and it is obliged to go through the filing of a series of studies and plans, and they will be assessed against the law that actually regulates what may be built there. So we're a long way from having that, but it is.
I think he froze on us.
Okay, then I'll go into
Just let's see if we can get him back real quick. Hold on one second, Mike. Okay, I know you're being very patient. Let's just see if we can get him back in.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah, there we are.
Sorry about that. I have the evil gremlin going on here. The second thing is with respect to the way in which development works, Mike, is anybody can buy a piece of land they want, and they can envisage what they want to put on it. But after they've put all the effort into thinking about it and planning it and coming out with studies, they then have to submit it for review and approval. So in terms of where we're at with this process, I think already the presentation has made it clear that this study and the one, this project and the one on the opposite corner, the Esso station, which is even earlier, it's not even a complete application. There's still a lot of work to be done. So I think to answer your question, this is a long way from a done deal. It doesn't mean it won't be, but it's not up to myself and my colleagues on council. It's going to be dealt with in the context of the law. And I think that's it for me. Mike, you might want to add something, or some of the planners.
Yeah, I'd like to follow that up, is that you allowed it to happen by changing the zoning from one story, so that you're inviting people to come and say, hey, well, yeah, I can put a 16-story building there. That it was zoned for one thing, that did the developers come to you first and then we changed the zoning? Or did you guys change the zoning and then the developers came?
Okay, so that'll be your second.
Well, no, question. Leave that as a comment then.
Okay.
No, I
think Councilor Sherman had to answer that. That's fine. Yep. Did we lose him? He's in deep thought about his answer before he. Let's wait one more minute to see if we get him back. While we're waiting, I can provide an answer to that as well, just because I think there's some part of that question. Oh, there we are. You back there?
Okay. I'll keep this quite short. Simply, plans always change, and there are circumstances. The biggest issue, Mike, you should know, is that the plan Roper 49 that you heard mentioned earlier, up till 2041, is going to bring 40,000 more people into Burlington. That requires the plans to be changed. And we have to figure out where they're going to be put. And that means plans such as the Uptown change. And that is what happened.
I'll just add a little bit to that as well, just Mike, and then you can have your second question. But Councilor Sherman did touch on this. I mean, the planning system is really based strongly on the ability to make an application by any landowner, right? So it doesn't really matter what the proposal is, they can apply. There's a process for determining what's a complete application, what might be acceptable, but the city then would have to technically accept an application that meets at least those initial requirements. And it'll be up to the applicant to justify what they're doing in the context of whatever applies to that site. And that's exactly what's happening. So no approval has been granted, and we certainly are seeking one. That's the purpose of the application, but we're not, that's not imminent, and that's been reiterated a few times. So Mike, then second question, if you could just keep it focused to the question would be great, just because we are kind of getting long in time, so I don't want to preclude others. Thank you.
All right, with respect to the studies that are done for this specific site, that half of them are done during COVID, so that the traffic study there in itself or whatever done during COVID with reduced everything, basically traffic. The wind studies are only taking into account what's on the site now, not what is going to be proposed there. The greenhouse gas study, everything seems really short-sighted and really self-serving for the application. Does not take into account what is around the surrounding area or what's coming. So all these things together, that the studies are basically, that I think they're really insufficient.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I think that is a comment we'll take. And you raised a good question that has come up many times over the past 2 years. So not to say your question is unique, but it's something that has been asked. And Scott, if you're comfortable with this, just a discussion on the COVID impact, let's say just for transportation purposes, because I know that's come up quite a few times in other applications. Are you able to comment on that, or do you feel comfortable commenting on that?
Sure, yeah. So as part of the traffic study, we collected historical traffic counts that were conducted by the Halton region in 2018, 2019, and 2013, pre-COVID volumes. Those volumes were inflated to a base year condition to account for general growth in traffic that might have occurred between 2019 and 2021, albeit any growth in the last 2 years is probably minimal due to COVID. So we have accounted for a COVID factor, if you will, in the traffic analysis.
But you only use 2%, and the growth in that is going to be like a 9.5.
That's right. It's a compound growth rate. So there is a general growth rate that we check with the Halton region based on their modeling data. And we get confirmation with them and from the City of Burlington Transportation Planning staff as well on what growth rates are appropriate for use in our study.
But it doesn't take into account the 2,000 more people coming. So that's why I'm saying it's a little short-sighted and self-serving. Looks good on paper.
Okay, we got the comment, Mike. I'm not trying to be rude to you, but I think we do want to make sure we have time for others. So if you want to come back and revisit that question, we can definitely do it again. But that's the answer. It has come up a number of times, and traffic is a challenging topic in every application. So the answers are complicated. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that answer. So next on my list was Colleen. Colleen can be given status and speaking privilege.
Hello, I'm so glad I got picked. I didn't know where I was in the queue. I got picked. Thank you. I have a few things to say. I've written them down. I've scrawled it, so I hope I did a good job. And then I have a question. So first off, thank you. I know that these are not necessarily the fun times, the joyful things, the celebrations with the balloons, but this is the great work that we do in the City of Burlington. And I'm really grateful that, as a resident, I have a voice. So thank you very much for this time. Everyone who's talked is here because we love Burlington. We love our town. And no one, the emotion that people speak with, the passion, the frustration, and the anger all comes from a place of we love our town. And we are living in a place right now in the Orchard that when I was a teenager was an orchard. And so we're all in a new build. So we're not against building. If we were against building, I wouldn't have a lovely home to live in right now to talk to you all. And we have a beautiful community. And I want these buildings, whatever gets built, to be something that we are proud of. We are something special here in Burlington. So, LJM, get on out there and build something that you're proud of, that we're proud of, that represents us, the residents. Don't talk to the city people. I'm sorry, city people. Don't talk to the city people. Come and talk to us. What we value. I go walking my dog every day. I can in a moment be in a naturalized area. I can see my neighbors over the fence. I know their names. I want these buildings to be perhaps a place that in a couple of years I might move into because my children are growing and I don't need this big house anymore. But I'm not going to buy in your building if I don't have anywhere to walk to. I'm not going to buy there if there isn't a charging location for my EV that I can get easily. I'm not going to buy there. There isn't storage and a balcony that I can actually sit on with my partner and look out. Oh, if it's a teeny tiny balcony, I don't want that. Come and ask us what we want. Because if you build these cookie cutter towers, if you build these places that don't have accessibility for different needs, if I can't get places that I can't get around, I'm not going to buy there. And then Burlington isn't going to be that special, amazing place. Because we are special. So, LJM, come on out and speak to us, the residents. It's great that the city's having this meeting, but you should be having this meeting. Because when I see your name, I want to know you didn't get this because you made a donation to, one of our councilors, which, yes, you absolutely have the right to do. But as Mayor Meade Ward says, know how it looks. It doesn't look so good. So instead, make a donation to me. Tell me what I want, because then I'm the best advertiser for you. We talked, Marianne Meade Ward spoke about the Millcroft Against Development. I don't know that group because I'm not in Millcroft. I'm in the Orchard. I'm not in Uptown. But we all work together. I want to make sure that it doesn't matter what group I live in, what community I live in. I want the city of Burlington to use the same measuring stick for how all of our areas are. I go down to Spencer Smith Park and I love it down there. I go to the dog park that's Rolly Bird Park. I go there. I go all over this town. I certainly hope people who live in other areas in Burlington feel comfortable and safe and welcome to come up to my area because it's great up here. So off my soapbox for a second, and now I have my question. And my question is to the city of Burlington. What have you done? What land have you acquired so that all of these 5 towers, the 3 we're speaking about today and the 2 we spoke about last week, how are you going to make sure that walkability just isn't walking along a paved street? How are you going to build the parks? How are you going to build playgrounds? How are you going to make outdoor meeting places that reflect the communities that you've already built in Uptown and in Orchard? So what is the city doing? What additional land has been acquired that isn't built for high density, that's been built for all the things that bring us together as a community? So that's my question. Thank you for picking me.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Great comments and questions. So I'm looking for this city. Who is anybody wanting to take that on at this point?
Sure. I'll note that this is something that we look at. We do have a team, parks and design team that does review every development application. There is a requirement for parkland dedication where they feel that it is required. When it's not required on the site, we do require cash in lieu of parkland dedication. That is something that is being reviewed by that team. Unfortunately, they're not here this evening to speak to it, but those comments are provided. If you wanted to reach out to me, I can provide the comments to you when they're received, or I can connect you with that person to answer those questions directly.
Thank you, Melissa. I do look forward to that. I was a City of Burlington employee in the Parks and Recs department for about 20 years. I value this city, and I would hate to see it lose some of its specialness. It is a wonderful community, and I do look forward to hearing from you. And I've got lots of opinions. Reach out to me.
If you wanted to provide your contact information to me offline, I can definitely connect with you, or just connect with me directly.
Okay, that's great. And that was your only question then, Colleen? I think we've got a comment and a question from you. We're good there? Okay, great, perfect. Thank you for that. So this next speaker I had higher on my list, and they seem to have slipped down, so I'm not sure what happened, but we'll go to her next anyway. So that'll be Natalie. Natalie's could be given status.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, thank you for choosing me.
great comments and everything so far. I won't keep you guys long. I just have a question that was written down. I just also want to know that I used to live at 1940 Ironstone, so I do know how it is to live in a condo building, especially in the area where this huge development is supposed to be taking place. And there are a few concerns that several of us, former residents from 1940 Ironstone, have with the LJM in particular. But I will read out my question, and I would really appreciate some feedback from the city. So when the city approves a developmental proposal, what is considered voluntary or involuntary? And what does it take the city to hold developers accountable for deviating from what they originally proposed to the city and or marketed to the community? For example, with specifically 1940 Ironstone, the builder proposed solar panels, also marketed and sold units as having the solar panels to help subsidize large offset cost of geothermal in winter months, and the solar panels were never ever installed them. As a result, the current owners incurred far more cost operating a geothermal system than would normally be necessary. So my question is, what is the recourse does the city have when a proposal deliberated by and considered by the city and deliberated by the city? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. It's, I think, a fair question. In certain respects, there's some things that only so much the city can control, right? So I don't mind, I know it's to the city, but I could probably give a bit of an answer, maybe to start and then let anybody else chime in or add to that. So in terms of the planning approvals, there are obviously two very specific mechanisms. One is, of course, the zoning bylaw, and the zoning can be very prescriptive, and of course, you cannot deviate from that. It's actually illegal as the law, right? So any application that goes after a zoning has been established has to show complete zoning compliance. It does happen, of course, that properties are out of compliance, and it's up to the property owner to rectify that, or there are actually legal penalties and fines that can be levied. So that's a bit of a broad question or answer to your question. The next one is the site plan approval process. So that pertains to the physical development of the city, and that usually is accompanied by agreements and cash securities and some type of certifications, which would certainly show that, at least from the city's perspective, certain critical elements like the infrastructure on the site, servicing, the landscaping, the parking has been so whatever has been approved, the site plan process then gets implemented and built, and that money then is held from the developer until those things are rectified, or the city could take action to actually redo the works, right? Some of the things you might be talking about could be marketing related, where there's internal features, for instance, so unit features or things that are maybe extraneous to the planning process but are still part of the development proposal. There can be certain things that really aren't controlled by the city that they have no recourse over. And there's probably a long list of that. So, it's kind of hard to say. Like your question is embrace some specific things, but if they weren't part of the planning approval, then it's really with the developer to provide, right? So
that's fair enough. However, again, I'm just asking what happens that we lost a significant amount of money. The board, we had to actually pay out of pocket for all these deficiencies. And I do understand with these new buildings, there are always going to be some deficiencies, but with the case of Ironstone, and it wasn't even just Ironstone, there are several other buildings, condos being built by this developer, and there are issues. They've taken them to carry on. There have been legal issues with them as well. I just wanted to kind of raise this concern with the city that when they do consider this planning, to consider these concerns, look at the history of the developer, and even just a simple Google search of the reviews will show you some of the feedback. So I really do hope, our city councilors do listen to us and take our concerns seriously. Because what happened in 1940 Ironstone was not, it's something that I do not wish upon anyone else. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. And obviously, we're here for open dialogue. I certainly don't want to control the comments, but I would like to keep, if we can, things focused on this application, because I don't think any of us can really speak to the previous development. Okay, so next on my list, I have curb. Curb can be elevated. and give him speaking status.
Hello.
Longer clock.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on a sec. Councilor Sherman, did you want to say something first, or? Kermit, if you can just hold on for 1 second. I might have missed Councilor Sherman with his hand up, and I think he's frozen again.
So are you waiting on me?
Hand up, sir. Yeah, if you wanted to speak first.
Yeah, what I was suggesting, since it's 8:58, if we want to consider keep going, because we still got a number of questions that have been asked. So what do you think about that?
I was going to ask the same question. I'm definitely prepared to keep going. I think our team is. I don't know if anybody else on this call has a hard stop that we have to. Yeah, I think we're good to go. So let's keep rolling until we get through this. I appreciate that, Councilor Sherman. I had the same thought. Okay, Kurt, thank you for being patient. If you would like to speak now, we'll keep rolling.
All right. Can you hear me now?
We can, yep.
All right, perfect. So I just want to talk about, kind of add to what Natalie said, but more in the context of this building. The proposal of this building kind of seems just to be a rushed attempt at constructing as many single bedroom units to meet the intensification goals. However, it doesn't really support the context of the existing neighborhood, let alone the future of building design. It's mostly single units in a family-oriented neighborhood. To the west, it borders industrial with no sidewalks or walkability along that part of Ironstone. There's no electrical vehicle plans. There's no solar plans, no geothermal. It really feels like a 1990s style condo being built for the future. And it's kind of frustrating to see that it's just like bare bones, let's just build. And no thought process to creating like a sustainable building whatsoever.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And I've once again broken one of my guidelines, which is I didn't get your name. So
yeah, it's Matt. It's Matt.
Yeah, it's Matt, right? Yeah. I knew it. I could tell by the voice. Okay, thanks, Matt. Well, I appreciate your comment. Obviously, you've given our some background as to why the proposal is designed the way that it is. There definitely was some forethought into the dwelling typology and the sizes and the types of unit mixes amongst all the phases. Certainly, I talked about the proposal for the POPs, which is a key piece for us. I mean, I don't think more flippant about that. I feel like that's not everything. We're not hanging our entire hat on this POPs, but it's still something that we think is a pretty important piece of our proposal that should provide something to the site that you don't see anywhere else right now, I don't think, or at least in the neighborhood. We're still at the zoning stage, so there's some details that would evolve from this proposal that would fall through the next stages, such as the architecture and more detailed design. So it's not rushed in any way. You can see from the discussions that we had earlier that there's been considerations for this site for quite some time and some planning by the owner, and certainly we've been involved in that as well as to what this could look like in the future, and that certainly has not been rushed. And certainly in terms of the application process, we're still at the beginning. We're not rushing through it. We're going to have lots of comments to respond to, and we'll have to take the time to do that. So likely there will be changes. I mean, every application I've been involved with in my planning career has had some kind of change, and that will be the next phase. So I appreciate those comments. We're comfortable with our submission, and we're here to receive the comments and take it from there, right? Did you have any other comments or questions, like a second one or a follow-up?
Yeah, I got another question. It's, I guess, directed at traffic for Burlington. So I know there's a discussion of widening Appleby Line potentially to 3 lanes each way. Has there been any consideration to what's going to happen to Ironstone west of Appleby Line? There's many multiple access points for the plaza, and I think this one has 2 or 3 access points to the proposal coming in on the south side. Mike, is that what it is?
There's actually 2 on to Ironstone, and then one so two exist right now. There's one to Ironstone and one to Appleby, and the proposal is for another 1 more, so 3 total to Ironstone.
And then is that going to meet at Heron Way, or is that going to be east of Heron Way?
That's a great question. Let me pull up my drawings here.
It's not super important, but essentially because of that, all these access points, I can't see Ironstone being sustainable at 1 lane each way. When people are making a left onto Ironstone heading northbound, and they're going to be turning onto Ironstone on a single lane, there's going to be people trying to turn right into the plaza, left into the condo, and it's just not going to be a sustainable road at 1 lane each way. So I was wondering if the city of Burlington has made any thoughts about that, if this proposal goes through, what their plans are for that entire stretch of Ironstone, and will they also maintain it on the east side of Ironstone on the other side of Appleby Line?
Okay, so thanks for that question. We don't have anybody from City Transportation on the call today. We do have Scott from our team, who could can speak to the capacities on Ironstone. Scott, did you want to take a crack at that at least and the work we did for this application for that component?
Sure. So there's no plans to widen Ironstone to be 4 lanes. We did look at the need for left turn lanes into the subject site at the driveways, and based on the volumes that are forecast along the Ironstone, there was no need for a left turn lane into the site. The existing pavement width out there is about 8 meters, give or take. Within that 8 meter cross section, you can really only fit 2, maybe 3 lanes, depending upon the lane width you design for. But short answer is there's no plans for improvements along Ironstone.
Because I live in and I travel down that road, and there's been multiple car accidents at the plaza entrance where the Pure and Simple is, and across from the existing plaza entrance on the south side. And I just can't see how it's going to sustain with 1 lane each way. It just won't work.
Okay, Matt, I appreciate that. You've given us some questions and some comments, so I think you got a follow-up there. That's the answer for now. We can consider those answered and addressed. So next on my list was Marissa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name's Marisa. I'm a resident in the Orchard neighborhood. My husband and I live here with our 2 kids. So I'm coming at this from a mom point of view here. I got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I just wanted to insert this kind of comment because I haven't really heard it come up yet, that the Orchard, lots and lots of kids, and that's what attracted to us to this community. We moved here from Calgary in 2012. And we actually, speaking to what other people were saying, the reason we landed in Burlington, it just really attracted us. We looked at Guelph, Waterdown, Oakville, but the city of Burlington really attracted us, and I've seen it change, especially over the past few years here. Dundas and Appleby is also getting super congested. Lots of towers going up there. But in our neighborhood alone in the Orchard, we have 5 elementary schools, which is pretty incredible. Lots of kids, lots of bikes, lots of pedestrians. My kids love to go across to past the Dundas Appleby area, also the upper middle Appleby area as well. So I'm very worried about traffic and how the additional 560 residential units will impact that already congested area. I've also seen an increase in accidents, near misses, people redirecting to come through our neighborhood, because Appleby Line and Upper Middle gets so congested, traffic seems to get picked up along Sutton, and then people blow through stop signs because they're frustrated with the traffic on Appleby Line. So it's a big concern for us. And even to the point that I think we might consider moving away from this area because it's getting too much. So I actually, the same question that somebody else already asked is, at what point does the development stop? Like, how do you know when the area is too saturated? And what metrics or measurements do you use to decide at what point do you stop the development in an area?
Okay, Marisa, that's great comments and a good question, which we did try to answer already. So I was trying to avoid the repeats, but I think that the question can be a comment as well, that you're reiterating the concern for that. If I don't want to paraphrase too much, but I think some of your comments too was about traffic from this proposal, cutting through the orchard, traveling through the orchard as part of the outbound traffic or the inbound traffic coming in and cutting through the orchard to get to the site. Was that the main part of your traffic comment?
Yeah, just my observation about I know we're talking specifically about Upper Middle and Appleby Line, but you do have to look further north to Dundas and Appleby Line because it's all one big area. It's all getting really congested. So this intersection is also going to get even worse. And I think that I'm worried about the fact that we're so family oriented. Lots of kids, lots of teens are always on these streets, on their bikes, on foot. And the massive amount of cars coming into this area is just getting worse and worse. And it's changing the demographics and the density of the area. It's not feeling the same. And it's just getting worse and worse. So I guess it is a comment, but the question specifically was more about at what point does this stop? Or is the city not, is there a targeted population density that the city is looking for? At what point is there an end point or no?
Okay. I think we did try to cover that question already. I guess I'll give my answer. I don't know if anybody on the panel wants to add to the answer we already gave, or Mary Ward. Yes, I see with your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, it's a great question. We don't set growth targets, the province does. And then they give those growth targets to Halton Region to divide up among the 4 municipalities. And that discussion is ongoing right now. Councillor Sharman referred to it earlier, that the population we have been assigned by the province through the region is roughly 40-some thousand between now and 2041. And then there'll be an additional allocation between 2041 and 2051. Other communities have been assigned more. So by 2041, Burlington will no longer be the second largest municipality, and Halton will be the third largest. So we're taking our share, but we're certainly not taking more than our share. And because we have no intention of developing into our rural area, we need to accommodate the growth that's been assigned to us within existing built boundaries, and ideally in areas that that are well served by transit or that are already built up, i.e. not on green space. So that is the task before us, to accommodate that growth. And there's a whole other number for jobs as well. So on these kinds of applications, especially where there are existing jobs or commercial activity, we look to see how we can preserve that or add to it, and not just take all that away and simply put in residential. So, some of the comments and the thoughts from the community tonight has been really helpful in terms of that comprehensive kind of planning focus, but we have to accommodate growth, and there's a lot more coming.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I think we will consider that your comment heard and your question answered. I appreciate that. So we'll move on to the next speaker, and I have it as Bob. Bob's still there. I see him on the list. Bob, if you want to speak.
Good evening, could you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, yes.
Okay. Good evening to everyone. I am really in support of all people that talk tonight, I mean public people, and basically they responded to many of my questions. So in your presentation tonight, you said that on June 21st, 2021, you had community meeting. I live in 9040 Ironstone, and it's first time tonight that I heard about that meeting. So I'm wondering how many public people were at that meeting.
Okay, so thank you for that question. We did, we sort of hit on this earlier, so we did have that meeting. That's a requirement of the city, the pre-application consultation meeting, and we did prepare for that and show up. And we were presenting to ourselves. There were no residents that attended that meeting. We have confirmed with the city, with staff, that the notifications were prepared and were mailed out. It would have, well, I'm just going from memory, so please correct me, Kyle or Melissa, if I'm wrong, but I think we did the standard 120 notification radius, right? That would have been the typical requirement that we would have followed. And nobody showed up. So we did do a notification, or the city did provide a notification that we also prepared. And I don't know if there's more to say than that, but am I correct in that there was the radius, Melissa or Kyle?
In my opinion, that radius is really small. Regardless, 9040 is within 120, but we have no one knows about that meeting. And you put on your list, like you talk with yourself. It wasn't public meeting. If no one from public.
Yeah, that's a good comment, and it's one of the reasons why we're here. There was also a public meeting at City Hall, or the Zoom meeting that was part of it at City Hall. So there's also the statutory public meeting on it. I think the comment is totally fair. I mean, all we can say is the notice was prepared. It went out. We did prepare to have that meeting. We were happy to hold it and do the discussion, and we are doing something almost identical right now. So I don't think it's too late. And here we are, right? So we're still talking about the application, the details, and having the engagement. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. Did you have another question?
Yes, I have. My second question is about April 5th public meeting that we had. And we had many comments, especially about number of one-bedroom units that are not family-oriented, about parking, about traffic, about so many, the same actually stories that we had tonight. And tonight we were told that it's in application, we haven't decided, but on April 5th, after we finished with our questions, all city staff or committee voted in favor of application. They didn't?
No, I'm going to have to stop you there. That's actually not true. What they voted in favor was a staff recommendation to continue processing the application. That was the recommendation, which, I mean, they could have decided not to at that point. So it was an information report with a recommendation to receive that report and continue processing the application, which is what's happening. So there's no decision made for anything other than that. That was the actual decision. So that is just not correct.
I really hope that you, city staff, councillor, and mayor, you listen our opinion tonight, our concerns, so many. Infrastructure is not there. I was surprised to hear that sanitary is not enough. And we're proposing 5 huge buildings. That's ridiculous. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Definitely appreciate your comments and your questions. Okay. Next on my list would be Trevor. Trevor, you have a chance now to speak.
Am I live? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I can happily say that a number of our concerns were already addressed, so I can wipe that one question off and stick to just the second one. Just with regards to the planning of this particular development, how much thought is given to the existing businesses that are in place, the ones who will both be displaced and also the ones that will remain? It's a pretty busy plaza as it stands, and the parking lot is always full. So if we're going to be reducing parking, will some of that underground parking be designated retail, or will it all be residential? And are the existing businesses that are going to be displaced, are they being given consideration for the new retail space that you're building or planning?
Okay, those are some great related questions. I can take a crack at those to start. So, in terms of the considerations, certainly you can see that it actually has been considered in how we propose the phasing, right? So, if you look at the phasing diagrams again, the phase one would not involve any disruption to the existing buildings. It would mostly preserve the existing surface parking that's there now. There would be a little modification of some of the southwest or northwest piece of the site, but then some parking would be added. And I tried to highlight that in each of the phases. So if you look at phase two, is the middle of the site. There's a part of that building that would have to be demolished and parking replaced. So there's an impact during that time period. So in that phasing, it's definitely been considered, and certainly the existing building to the south, the proposal shows that will be maintained all the way through, and certainly there'd be surface parking provided at full build out. The part of our submission that we haven't talked about tonight is that we are proposing a way to share parking or to have parking shared between, so it should operate as a seamless site where parking is really available for all retail visitors, so commercial users, and we intend that will be the case. So right now we're just dealing with the zoning stage of that, where we want to make that a possibility in some way of doing that. It would definitely require more implementation and more work as we go through the phases, if we go through those phases. But that's a key piece of our proposal as well, so that we have a total amount of parking for the site, and whatever is dedicated to the retail, commercial, office component would be shared essentially, right, between the users. I don't know about the consideration of space for existing tenants to the new. That's something that the developer can handle through the private lease agreements, but certainly we're providing the space because it's part of the mixed use proposal, right? So it's a key piece to have the space in the buildings, and whenever tenants go there is a sort of a private decision, right, between the owner and tenants. Did you have any other follow-up questions or any comments?
I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So next on my list, I'm just looking to see who's still here. I've lost a few folks, I think, that have their hands up. I think it would then end up being Paul. But Paul, can we give him status?
There you go. Have you got me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for being there. I've lived in Burlington for many years, and I have no problem with development whatsoever. But obviously, like everybody, we have problem with responsible development. As a statement, and then I'll get to a question. This afternoon at 4:20, it took me 15 minutes to get from Appleby and Upper Middle to the QEW. It took me just over 30 minutes to continue on, and that's the total time, to Mary Lou's, where I shop, which is at Walker's and New Street. So we definitely have a traffic problem in this city. And I would like to suggest to the developer that possibly this is an opportunity to come up with some really super modern transportation for the city, partner in it, Let's get something going here that works. We don't want to follow Mississauga and the 80s development. We want to go forward. We want to look forward. The car is a thing of the past. Let's get away from the car. Let's use this development as a stepping stone for the future. Okay, my question for you, sir, is, and I don't know the answer, but there is a lot of publicity due to the inflation of real estate and homes about affordable housing. Will this development come under the heading of affordable housing? And does anybody know what affordable housing is? Because I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment and your question. I think it's probably a nuanced answer. I would give you my take on it, and then maybe the city planners would want to add their comments or say their own piece. So true affordable housing is not a huge component of the application. We did provide a housing impact statement that we prepared that looked at the various housing factors and used the information that was available. Part of the submission that we've made is one dedicated true affordable housing unit per phase, and that would be something like you might consider like a Habitat for Humanity, that type of an arrangement, where it would be truly to the lower income percentile in that term of definition of affordable housing, right? So, and that's like, you might think of it as I wouldn't say subsidized, but really the true housing, core housing need. Then there's another definition or related definitions that the province uses that talk more about housing costs or rental values in relation to income, and there's a 60th percentile value. And so we haven't done that analysis necessarily. So that would be more about housing affordability per se, I guess, than true affordable housing, and a way of showing how some of the units offered would at least be closer to or a percentage of the median income as sort of the province measures it. So that we could probably look at, but I don't have that number for you today. I don't know if Melissa or Allison, if you wanted to add anything or correct me, or if you think that's sufficient, but I give you a chance for that too.
Oh, sorry about that. Maybe a quick plug that the city has been preparing a housing strategy, and that housing strategy is going forward very soon in June, and it really does take a look at what should we be asking for, what are the targets that we should be assessing development applications against. So that's another tool that the city will have in its toolkit. And I haven't got it right at the tip of my fingers, Paul, about the definition, but we do spend a bit of time. We look to the region often to say what is affordable, and they do that through their state of housing work. So look, I'd just say if you're interested in housing affordability and housing options, really is what we really need to be building everywhere in the city. Look to the housing strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison. That's great. And do you have a follow-up question or comment?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Affordable housing is super important because we need employees, and I can name several restaurants that are struggling right now to just find staff, and it's everywhere. It's not just even in Canada. I know it's in Europe as well. So affordable housing is extremely important, and affordable doesn't necessarily mean paying them more money. It can be the fact that a motor car is a very inefficient piece of equipment. It sits there doing nothing for most of its life, including, frankly, my 3 cars. And my 2 motorbikes. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. We've got to change our lifestyle here, and your development in this part of Burlington, once approved, and it's going to get approved in some form or another, there's going to be others. There's going to be you're going to move up to 5. You're going to go across the Walkers. It's going to happen, and it's a wonderful opportunity to address this whole situation and get out of the 1980s and after the Second World War development into the future. And the future is, let's get rid of the car because it costs people too much money. And that partly comes into affordable housing. So thank you very much for your time and have a great evening. What's left of it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul. That's great. I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there. Councilor Sharman, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something or respond? Just give him a minute to unfreeze, hopefully.
Have I still got the floor here? Sorry about that.
You do. Please proceed.
I was just talking about low income cutoff. But basically what it means is that a family of four who earn about, I don't know what the number is, maybe $40,000 or $50,000 today, they are considered as living at the low income cutoff. They're able to afford something than the order of $200,000, $200,000 to $300,000. It's that order. So the thing is, those numbers are based on data from up until 5 years ago, and since then property prices have increased dramatically. So we're looking at about 100,000 people in Bolton who can't afford to buy a house ever nowadays. And when it comes to building housing, we're never really talking about relatively affordable housing, which is what in Burlington now, $600,000 for a small condominium. This is a problem that we all have to deal with, and then put that in the context of another 60,000, 40,000 people coming in the next 20 years. There's no easy way out, and the traffic congestion on top of that is a really ferocious issue, and that's a very complex problem we have to talk about. Is mostly cut off traffic during peak hours. Appleby Line suffers from people trying to get in and out of Milton to get to the GO station or get to the highway. It's a very difficult problem to address, but housing isn't actually going to solve that problem.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. My next speaker is Jeff. Jeff, next. Do we have Jeff or did we lose Jeff? Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. I don't see him on the list anymore. If we lost him somehow, I'll keep him on here.
No, he is here, but there is no sound coming.
Oh, there's no sound. Okay. Okay. I guess, Jeff, if you can hear us, we'll come back to you. I don't know if you want to take a look at your settings and see if you can look at your audio settings, or if you need help with that. Maybe we'll move on then, just so we keep moving with speakers I had after that. Natalie, she's not there anymore. It would be, geez, we lost a lot of people. Lillian then. Lillian? Are we struggling with sound here as well?
Hi, sorry about that.
No problem.
My computer's being slow all evening. Thank you for taking my call. and thank you for the information that you've laid out. Scott, I might actually want to get your email a little bit later. I don't know if there's a chance to have contact information for people on the panel later. And I know there's been a lot of talk about traffic. I live at Treaty Court, which is just north of Ironstone and Imperial Way, right beside the 6-story apartment building and the 11-story apartment building. I know when that 11-story first went up many years ago, I met with Mr. Mayor McIsaac at that time and his planning committee. And of course, since then, there's been a lot of development. And I have met with Mr. Planetta, who owns the property on the east side of Corpus Christi High School. And I know that he would like to make it residential. I know the city would like to make that industrial. So that is a large piece of property that's just east of me. I get a chance to see the traffic that runs along Upper Middle during traffic, which can be quite backed up. And I know there's apartment buildings going up at Dundas, northwest corner of Dundas. All that I know you're looking at the traffic impact as it currently hits the Upper Middle and Appleby Line, and you've got data for the last couple of years, but are you looking long-term ahead when those developments are open up at Dundas? Because that traffic will go along the QEW, up Appleby, and it's already a problem, as we know, and then the possible development that will eventually be put in east of Corpus Christi, Upper Middle. So it's not just about solely this impact of these buildings. And I don't know if I'm missing something. I heard somebody say there's a proposal for where the Esso station is. I thought actually I thought I was maybe making a mistake, but if that's something that's going in there, there's some issues with that as well, obviously. So I'm looking long term. Because I've been here I've lived in this house on Treaty Court for 23 years, and I've seen it mushroom. I mean, the only thing that was here when I moved in was the plaza where the Millcroft Plaza where Metro is, and that was the only thing that was here.
Okay, I think those are great comments, and the question really is more focused on how is the future with respect to transportation being considered, and you're saying long term. So, Scott, I know we have a decent answer for this just by virtue of the fact that the report's not done in isolation and does include the growth rates and consideration of other developments. But if you want to, you can probably say it better than I can if you want to answer.
Sure. And Lillian, if you just want to contact Mike or Melissa with your comments, I'm sure they'll find their way to my desk. Okay. The traffic impact study assesses a 5-year horizon post build out, so estimated to be 2033. That's the horizon year that we assess. There are longer term transportation studies that are done. Those are usually done at a more macro level, and those are often, or those studies are completed by the Halton region and the city of Burlington themselves. So they are looking very long term. I forget what horizon years they're forecasting, but it's something like 2050-ish, give or take.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Lillian, did you have a follow-up or another question?
Yeah, as I said, just noticed that like in the 23 years, I mean, I was shocked to go up Tremaine. I know we're reaching but going up Tremaine, and I know like all the development in Milton, it seems to me that they built all this development and then they decided to expand Derry. And here there's talk of, possibly expanding Appleby Line. So I sometimes wonder, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or the horse before the cart, because, if you start like impacting, expanding Appleby there with, the townhouses that are on the southeast side of Ironstone and Appleby, there isn't a lot that you can do with that. And I don't think an HOV lane or a bus route, and the buses don't run frequently enough to actually make that a thing. And I mean, a lot of it is high occupancy, you know, like couples and families traveling that route. So, I know there's been a lot of concern. The 11-story building that went in right at the corner of Imperial and Ironstone was supposed to be, there's supposed to be 2 of them. And I know I went around and I actually got signatures. That's, you know, what led to my meeting with Mayor McIsaac. I'm certainly willing to, you know, generate popular, I've got a summer coming up, you know, I'm a teacher, and I've got a summer coming up that, you know, if I need to, you know, go old school and get the community involved, I think really a lot needs to be done to look at this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Really appreciate that. Okay, I think we can consider that. Move on to the next speaker. So I see Jeff is back in the list. Jeff, we want to try one more time. Hopefully your audio is resolved. Go to Jeff. Still nothing.
Hold on.
You want it? There you go.
I use Zoom like 3 times a day and I didn't get that right. Sorry about that. Thanks very much. Thank you much for holding the meeting tonight and hanging in here this long. So I'm Jeff Bowden. I've lived in the Orchard community since 2020, so quite a long time. 2010. So I just wanted to say that the answer I thought to the question about the developers process and planning on the green building front as far as climate change impact was pretty weak, if not actually, I think, sad in this day and age that in 2022 we don't have climate impact and resiliency front and center in any development that we're doing in the city. So I've got a 2-pronged question. One to the developer, if you can commit to putting a better plan, if anything, beyond just greenscaping. It certainly has a bit of a carbon offset, but not very much. So commitment to a better plan for the building site and the building itself in terms of its impact on climate and on climate resiliency. And then to the city, if there are any carrots and or sticks in light of the climate action plan and the declaration of climate emergency, of things that the city and through the region or the province can do to ensure that private development in our community is climate friendly and also resilient to climate change.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for the questions. So I think I can answer the first one since that was to the developer. And I mean, it's why we're here, right? So I think the answer to your question is we'll definitely consider the statements that you've made and others. That's one of the comments that's come through from this meeting. I would say a comment from more than one person. So what we would commit to, I always say this in my meetings, I mean, I don't think it's probably our best planning to commit to 1 or 2 specific things, but we'll have to respond to that comment. That's really the commitment, right? So whatever we come up with will be as part of our total package, and we'll look at that again. So that's really all I can say for now. We've got a lot of things we'll have to consider, and that'll be it. I guess from the city's perspective, in terms of any ways to encourage or require it, does anybody want to take a crack at that? I see Mayor Meadward.
Yeah, unless staff want to weigh in, because they're far more experienced in this than I, but I will tell you that we have very limited jurisdiction to compel sustainable development features. We do have very robust sustainable development guidelines that we ask to be followed, but we have no legal jurisdiction. It's one of the things we'd love to have in our powerful toolkit, but we don't. So that's a good question to be lobbying your friends at the province right now. They're all campaigning and giving local municipalities additional tools and more local planning powers is a great question to ask MPPs who knock on your door. Because we can certainly use the assistance. At this point, we can encourage, we can suggest, but we can't compel.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So Jeff, I think is there anybody from staff? I think that's a great answer. Is anybody from staff that I think that's answered probably.
I think the mayor hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
We certainly, Jeff, to your question, we certainly work with applicants to encourage them to take stronger measures and to fully implement the sustainable design guidelines. But as the mayor said, it's a challenge for us to take that next step.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Okay, Jeff, so I think we consider your questions answered. I have a few more speakers here that have not spoken yet. We're getting down to the last few. So the next I had on my list was Luke and Mir.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
You can.
Brilliant. Okay, so first of all, for Mike, Luke Chesson, 50664 Forest Grove Crescent in the Orchard. So there you go. There's a name and address for you.
Perfect.
Figured I might as well just fire that out there. Second of all, with respect to what Natalie said earlier, a couple of comments, just like first, and then a couple of questions. I think referencing a developer's previous record is hugely important. I don't think that deserves to be let go. If there's issues in the Ironstone development that can be avoided in the new development, I think that you guys need to have that conversation. If you choose not to have that conversation, you're doing an injustice to everybody that lives here now and everybody that buys there going forward. Second of all, as somebody who's lived here since 2011, I bought here having looked at the official city plan, and looked at the zoning, looked at everything else. I understand that the province is kind of like stuffing some of this stuff our way. I don't feel represented right now. I feel like somebody is trying to tell me how they're going to make it easier for somebody to take my stuff, rather than saying, don't take his stuff. So that's just a comment. I don't think that's cool. I'm not good with that. So do better. Okay, on to the questions. With respect to parking, I live in the Orchard. Paul and I have had conversations about this previously. We have a neighborhood on-street parking program that Paul worked really, really hard on. I don't love it. I never did. I don't think that's a secret between Paul and I. But the community wanted it because they were suffering. They were getting tickets left, right, and center all over the place, because when this community was planned, and Sheldon Creek and Uptown's like no different, we didn't plan this to allow for people to have enough cars. And I understand that there's, a quick Google search says that if you don't build enough parking, people are going to have less cars. Guess what? We've proven that's not going to happen here. Okay, so like all the pipe dreams down the road, and all respect to Paul with his like 3 cars and 2 bikes and everything else, not Paul Sherman, the other Paul. This is not going to work. I said this when we were talking about the development of the ESO. It's a pipe dream. Get it out of your head. Build enough parking. People do not have 1 Prius and a bicycle. They have 2 F-150s planned for it. Get it out of the way. Second of all due respect to Scott, not allowing for left turns off of Ironstone into the thing because it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. Dude, it's going to be a problem. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to work. And the last question, actually, this one's straight up for Scott. I know that you guys have accounted for the condos that are going in across from the Lowe's up on the north part of Appleby. Have you guys accounted for the additional truck traffic that is likely to come from the CN intermodal terminal that's planned off of Tremaine up towards Milton? Because that has the potential to be a goat rope of epic proportions down here. So if they actually build that intermodal and they're running 1,500 trucks a day down Appleby Line through the middle of this thing, have you guys planned for that? That's it for me.
Okay. Scott.
So left turns will be permitted into the site from Ironstone. What I said previously, if caused any confusion, was there's no need for a left turn lane. So you can turn left from the shared lane into the site. And then has the study considered the CN intermodal development? Not explicitly, no.
Okay, so respectfully, Scott, a left turn lane would be required. Left turning out of the main lane will just back things up way worse than they've been before. Like, I mean, it's already congested in there. I don't understand how you guys could come to a conclusion that it's not going to be a factor. And please consider the CN development. I mean, I think that thing's a whole other kettle of fish, but this has the potential to degrade before it has a chance to get better. So I guess my question to like city staff and to the developer to a certain extent is just simply like, we've made mistakes previously that we've had to put band-aids on to solve. Why don't we fix them before they become a problem? And it seems like nobody has an appetite to solve things before they're becoming a problem. They want to cut the wound and then try and figure out how to sew it up after. And I just do not understand why we're going about this backwards.
Okay. I think those are good comments. We've heard those. I don't know if we have any much more to say about it than that, though appreciate that. We can probably move on then to the next speaker. We would go with Sherry. Sherry?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for selecting me to ask my question. I realize it's very late. We're going on 3 hours now, and so I will just add in a quick comment and a question of sorts. As a start, I'm a resident of 1940 Ironstone. I'm new to Burlington. I just moved here a few months ago. I love it. I love living here. I guess my question and concern is I don't know a lot about city planning. I'm new to this, and frankly, I moved in within a couple of months. I received a notification in my mailbox that these developments were happening. So this whole process is very new to me. So I don't have a lot of questions about traffic or water runoff or anything like that. My concern, selfishly, is being that I live right on Appleby, and my balcony's right on Appleby, is the noise pollution, and what is that quality of life going to be for those that live right there with this construction and, ensuing across the street. Now there's widening of the street. Is my road going to be a highway underneath me? And that's a concern. I moved to Burlington to be a remote worker. I work in fintech, and I guess my concern is my home going to be like the gardener all of a sudden? Is that the quality of life that I'm looking at? So for the people living in Ironstone, the people living along Appleby, just south of Ironstone in the townhomes, has there been any consideration to how this development will impact their quality of life over the duration of the build? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think you got a couple of things wrapped up in there. In terms of your quality of life impacts from Appleby, I don't think, this is just my opinion, I don't think you're looking at a situation where it's the gardener. I think that you've heard some comments from staff and from us this evening that there's plans for other forms of transportation and really some efforts to look at de-emphasizing the car and working on walkability and public transit and making those connections amongst other parts of the city and a wider network. So, if those things prevail, I think you have a totally different context. You could have a nice, fine, walkable, transit-supported neighborhood, which would be fantastic, which is definitely not the gardener. Your other comment about the quality of life, I think, is during the construction period. It's hard for me to really answer exactly how that would play out. We're really early on in the planning stage. We're looking at the zoning first. That is a key piece for getting a proposal even tangible, and we've got a lot of work to do. My experience through the site plan process is there's some discussion and requirements in the city on construction management. There's certainly a noise bylaw in the city. There are limitations to that. I don't have a perfect answer, I guess is what I'm saying. So we have to park that one and come back to that and see if there's some better, more detail we could provide. But certainly there's some things that will be looked at and done and implemented, but it will be construction, and there will be definitely a long period of construction, and it will be visible and somewhat audible, and that will be the way all construction proceeds, right? So, okay. Do you have a follow-up or a comment or a follow-up question?
Yeah, sorry. I believe the bylaw stipulates construction hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday. So that's quite a lot of noise, right? And so that audibility is happening. And just imagine you're working in your home, you don't go to work, so you're there all day, and it's loud. Like I'm scared of that because I literally just purchased here. And so as a concerned resident, I can't comment on, okay, maybe it's not going to be the gardener, but there'll be street widening, right? So, I mean, what does that time frame look like? Is that like a year, 2 years? Like, when does this start? Well, I don't know what this process is, so.
Yeah, that's I appreciate that. I think we've done our best to try to answer that earlier. I don't know if we have anything more to say. The timing is to a degree dictated by the region, and that's ongoing in terms of the widening of the road. The construction is not happening tomorrow. It's going to be some time away and over a period of time. So, okay, I appreciate your comments and your questions. So at this point, and we've gone pretty much an hour past what we thought we would do. This has been a great discussion. There's been a lot of great speakers and questions. What I would like to do, I'm kind of making this call here, is that we'll do one last first-time speaker, which I believe, unless I have a mistaken, will be Chris Lambeck. And then anybody else who has a follow-up question or comment, you've spoken already. I think there's 2 repeat speakers on the list. Then you would just email me or contact me after the fact, and we'll deal with those questions or comments in a follow-up after this meeting. This has been a long night for everybody. So, Chris.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. I'm a resident of Burlington since 2002, and I've heard a lot of things here, and a lot of it deals with failures by the developer to the existing community, to the future community, to the environment. And I think there is not a compelling message coming from the developer why this development is an improvement to our community. It's going to provide additional housing, but there's very little value added. I think the feedback that you're getting is that the type of housing that's being proposed is not welcome in our community. Personally, I believe that we do need more intensification. So I'm not against this development. I'm not against having more people living in our community. I am against the quality of development that's being proposed, the process of development. And I think that right now, the developer has failed in making a compelling argument why there's a substantive improvement to our community. So I'm not sure that there's much of a question there, but I think as residents, you can reflect on the entire conversation from today, and you're getting the feedback that there's very little upside to us to have you come in. And I don't want to have less people here. I think we owe it to everyone that we do adopt those additional 40,000 people. So I'm not against that at all, but you're providing a low quality solution, and that's the feedback that you're getting. And I would ask that you come back with a better solution. I think this pushes me to where the city has its development process, and the mayor has sort of pushed this to be a responsibility or something where their hands are tied. This is a development process that is paint by numbers. The developer knows what they have to do, and the city has very little to do but to react to it. We need a proactive management of the city. There are macro trends. Scott has talked about traffic. Basically, it's a half-assed job. He's been given the scope of a half-assed job. He's done a half-assed job because that's not his job. We can't be upset with the developer about this. We have to be upset with the city to create a development process that truly reflects everything that we need. And we cannot have a development that is a paint-by-numbers process. We cannot have a city that is reactive. We need a city that is proactive. And yes, we have to talk to our local politicians that are now running for the election, but we have to be able to communicate that. And Paul Sherman and the mayor, you are our spokespeople. You need to articulate the bigger picture, and you're failing to do that. We need you to be stronger. We need you to have that vision, and we need you to put solutions in place and not simply react to a developer who's got a very finite objective. I feel that at this point in time, we need you to tell us what you need us to do so you are empowered to be proactive rather than reactive. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Chris, thanks. I think we can take that as a comment. I think that's maybe a good way to wrap up the evening. Obviously, we feel good about the quality of our project. I don't think that necessarily the city has been reactive, but we go back to how we started this meeting with a high-level review from Allison about where the policy is going, and we know that it's not just the city involved, it's the province and the region as well, and I think there's actually quite a bit of planning being done by the city's staff and council, and this area has been pegged that way for quite some time. So the applications really are looking to fit within that context, and by very, very virtue of making the application, there has to be a reaction, right? Because we make the submission and then city staff agencies respond. So I think that's great. So I'm happy to, I think, close the book on the Q&A. It's been a really great evening. I've obviously engaged in the discussion myself. We've had, I think, some pretty fantastic answers from everybody on the panel, really, and I thank all those who stuck it out to the end here. I think we still have 43 attendees that are still on the line. So what I will do now is, if we can just put my presentation back up, just because my contact information was going to be that last slide, just so people have that. Maybe I should have shared this earlier because those that left won't have that, but you can pass it around. If you know somebody's left the meeting already and they want to have my information, this is it. So before we disband, I would just like to say a few thank yous. So thank you to Councillor Sharman for spearheading this initiative to have this meeting and for attending and participating. Thank you to Mayor Meeboard for also participating in her answers and engaging in the conversation. I would thank also Councillor Stolte and Councillor Bendabania for participating and observing. Thank you to staff for doing the presentations and also answering questions and sticking it out to the end. And thank you to my team, including the developer and my other colleagues on the applicant team who have been involved in this application process at this point and have been around to answer these questions as well. I would give the opportunity to Councillor Sharman and Mary Ward for any closing remarks. Councillor Sharman, if you'd like.
Thank you very much, Mike. I want to thank everybody for being here for so long. I think it demonstrates quite clearly the interest there is with this project. I think it also demonstrates the amount of interest there is in the entire uptown environment and the direction it's going in. Just thinking about that last comment about the city versus the province versus the region and what council can do. Well, one of the things we can do is exactly what we did this evening. Recognize that we had not had enough input from the community and give everybody the opportunity to come out and talk and get questions and make comments. So I feel pretty good that we've made that happen. But I also want to give everybody the opportunity to talk to me and the city and the mayor and my colleagues just about the complexity of the planning environment we're working in. There is nothing trivial about anything we're doing. There's no easy answers. It's not about a bunch of council members, just making a snap decision. It doesn't work that way. These plans go on for decades, and they change and they evolve, and we're all trying to respond to that just in the same way as the community members are. I'm not saying for 1 minute any application is right or wrong. I'm just saying it's there, and we have to deal with it in the context of the methods and practices we have, and we have to ask the community to participate in the process. And thank you for doing that this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Sherman. Over to you, Mayor Meeboard.
Thanks very much, Mike. I do appreciate everyone coming out this evening and giving us your very valuable feedback. And just to add to what Paul said as well, we do a number of things to be proactive. And one of them is through our official plan, which actually started when Paul and I both started on council in 2011. And our current official plan, because it's tied up at the Ontario Lands Tribunal, is still not approved. We completed that work in 2020. And so the last speaker, I really appreciate the question that you asked of us. What do you need us to do? Meaning you, the community. What do we need you, the community, to do? Please get involved in those discussions. There were hundreds of opportunities to be involved in the official plan, and that really does set the broad vision for where we are going to try to accommodate the growth that we know and knew even back then. The numbers have just been refined more recently, but we knew and know that growth has been coming for some time. I appreciated, I think it was Colleen Golightly's comment, that planning process proactively built the orchard that folks are living in. That planning process proactively built Alton and is building Alton West right now. That planning process built Ironstone, where many of you live. That is proactive planning, where we have tried over many decades to accommodate growth, and growth is still coming. So you saw the maps earlier around where we expect it to go and where we don't want it to go. And those, so please participate in those conversations. I'm thrilled that so many of you came tonight. Please continue to follow this file and those that are in your immediate area. And also please sign up for newsletters. So mayor@burlington.ca, you can get online. I think it's Ward 5 at burlington.ca is Councillor Sharman's. Ward 4 at burlington.ca is Councillor Stoltz. Ward 6 at burlington.ca is Angelo Bentavania's. Please subscribe to those. Your councillors do proactively reach out with information to invite you to comment. So we do this together. You know, the best planning in the city is done when we all come together with applicants to impress upon them what we're looking for, with you in the community to reflect what you want, and then we make our decisions within the jurisdictions that we have. So we'll continue to do that as we've done for many years. And again, thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Those are some great closing remarks as well. So I don't have anything further. This is my information once again. You can reach out to me for anything. We will circulate those comments as we mentioned. And I think we can consider this a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.